There are nights when the world outside falls into silence. Yet, inside your own mind, 1,000 voices refuse to rest. The room is dark. The air is still. And yet, the battlefield of thought is alive with whispers, arguments, and memories that circle endlessly. Perhaps you know this feeling, the weight of unspoken words, the sudden return of fears you thought you had left behind, the restless search for clarity in the middle of the night. In these hours, the mind shows its power. It can feel like both a loyal friend and a merciless enemy. You may lie awake replaying old regrets, rehearsing conversations that will never happen, or imagining futures shaped by doubt. And still, beneath all of this noise, there is a quiet longing for peace, for the soft silence of a mind at rest. If this message resonates with you so far, please take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you feel gently called to do so. And before we move deeper into this journey, I invite you to comment below your current time and country. I would love to know where in the world you are listening from, and perhaps it will remind you that you are not alone in your search for calm. The Buddha once said in the Dhammapada, "We are shaped by our thoughts, we become what we think." When the mind is pure, joy follows, like a shadow that never leaves. These words are not simply a poetic reminder, but a truth that echoes across centuries. They tell us that the wars of our lives, the battles of success and failure, happiness and despair, are not fought outside in the chaos of circumstance. They are fought here, within the intimate walls of the mind. Your thoughts are not empty visitors, they are seeds. And whatever you plant within this inner soil will one day grow roots and bear fruit in your outer world. Think of it this way. When you nurture anger, it does not stay contained in the mind. It spills outward, shaping your words, coloring your decisions, pushing you into conflict. When you entertain fear, your steps falter, your choices shrink, your days become smaller than they need to be. But when you plant courage, when you water persistence, when you tend to seeds of compassion, the harvest is entirely different. You begin to see life with clarity. You act not from hesitation, but from strength. The law is simple and undeniable. What you cultivate inside will one day rise outside. In the teachings of Zen, the mind is often compared to a garden. If left untended, weeds of confusion and distraction grow wild, choking the delicate blossoms of clarity. A gardener does not hate the weeds, nor does he despair at their presence. He simply notices them, gently pulls them out, and makes space for what he truly wants to grow. This is how awareness works. It is the first step toward mastery of thought. Without awareness, the weeds of negativity and fear spread unchecked. With awareness, the garden can be shaped into something peaceful, beautiful, and nourishing. Most people move through their days unaware of what passes through their minds. Thoughts arrive like uninvited guests, and without question, they are allowed to stay, to sit, to eat, to take over the space of the home. But you are not here to drift like most people. You are here because something in you wishes to awaken, to guard the treasure chest of the mind with care. From this day forward, the task becomes simple. Though not always easy, watch the gate. Notice who comes knocking. Decide who may enter. And when fear appears, as it always will, meet it not with surrender, but with courage. When doubt rises loudly, answer softly but firmly with confidence. When weakness stirs, respond with the steady strength that is already within you. The Buddha's victory under the Bodhi tree is perhaps the clearest story of this truth. When Mara, the Lord of Illusion, came to tempt him with fear, with desire, with doubt, the Buddha did not run. He did not fight with anger. He simply sat still. He touched the earth with one hand and declared, "The earth is my witness." In that moment, he neither rejected the intruding thoughts nor became enslaved by them. He saw them clearly for what they were, illusions, and by doing so, they lost their power. This is the essence of mastery. You do not need to control every thought that passes by, but you must see it, recognize its nature, and decide whether to nourish it or let it fade. Awareness is the light. Without it, the mind is a battlefield fought in darkness, where shadows confuse truth with illusion. With awareness, the battlefield becomes a place of clarity. You see each thought not as an absolute truth, but as a passing visitor, a seed waiting for your choice. Will you plant it? Will you feed it? Or will you let it drift away? Unwatered, unrooted. Remember this: you are not your thoughts. You are the one who observes them. When you believe every thought that arises, you hand over your power. You begin to live in the minds of others, adjusting your rhythm to their expectations, shrinking yourself to fit their interpretations. But when you recognize that thoughts are not who you are, you reclaim your strength. You are not the storm of thoughts. You are the sky that holds them all. Clouds may pass dark, heavy, or light, but the sky remains untouched. So tonight, as you listen, as you rest, allow yourself to notice. Do not push thoughts away. Do not cling to them either. Simply watch. Watch how one thought fades into another, how each one arrives and departs, like footsteps across a quiet path. Some will be heavy, filled with fear. Some will be soft, filled with hope. Your task is not to force them into silence, but to recognize that silence was here before they arrived, and silence will remain when they are gone. The first step is awareness. The first victory is seeing, and in this gentle seeing, the seeds of transformation are already being planted. Imagine a quiet garden at dawn. The mist is still hanging low over the earth, and the soil is damp with the memory of rain. A gardener steps out with a small pouch of seeds, knowing that whatever is placed into the soil this morning will rise in time to meet the sun. Some seeds, when planted, will grow into flowers that perfume the air and delight the eye. Others, when scattered carelessly, may become thorny weeds that entangle the beauty and choke the life of the blossoms. The mind is no different. Each thought that passes through your awareness is a seed, and the soil does not discriminate. It will accept whatever you give it, and with patience, it will return the harvest. In Buddhism, this truth is expressed as karma, not merely the grand fate of lifetimes, but the subtle patterns of cause and effect that unfold within every moment. When you entertain thoughts of anger, that energy shapes your tone of voice, your posture, your choices, and it ripples outward to others. A single seed of irritation may sprout into a quarrel, a broken friendship, or even a habit of bitterness that colors your entire outlook. But when you plant compassion, the result is entirely different. Words soften, the body relaxes. The day begins to move with grace rather than friction. The harvest of peace is not accidental. It is cultivated by choice. Think for a moment of how easily we plant fear without noticing. A small worry appears in the mind, perhaps the fear of failure, or the thought of losing something precious. Instead of watching it pass, we feed it with attention. We replay it again and again. Soon it grows roots, and hesitation blooms. Opportunities are missed, not because they were absent, but because the soil of the mind was occupied by weeds of doubt. On the other hand, courage begins in the same small way. A single moment of daring to say, "I will try," becomes a sprout of confidence. When watered with repetition and action, it matures into strength. This is why the Buddha taught that wholesome thoughts must be cultivated deliberately, while unwholesome ones must be gently released before they spread. There is a Zen saying, "Sitting quietly, doing nothing. Spring comes and the grass grows by itself." On the surface, it may sound like a call to passivity, but look deeper. The teaching is about trust in the natural process. When you sit with awareness, without interference, the garden of the mind begins to reveal itself. You see which seeds are trying to grow. You see which plants are already towering. And in this seeing, wisdom is born. You do not need to force blossoms to open, nor do you need to panic when weeds appear. You simply tend with patience, pulling what is harmful, watering what is helpful, and letting the seasons unfold in their time. Many people scatter weeds unknowingly each day. They repeat to themselves, "I am not enough," or "I always fail," or "life is against me." These are not harmless words. They are seeds, and once planted, they shape the reality you walk into. The tragedy is not that life is cruel, but that we sometimes forget our role as gardeners. We imagine that the soil is responsible for what grows, when in truth, it only gives back what was placed into it. If you plant thorns, thorns will rise. If you plant roses will bloom. The soil does not choose, it simply reflects. Consider how this plays out in daily life. If you dwell constantly on obstacles, you begin to see them everywhere. Even small inconveniences appear as mountains. But if you dwell on possibilities, your perception shifts. The same obstacle becomes a stepping stone, an invitation to grow. Our teacher, in Disgiza, the external world has not changed. It is the inner soil that has been altered. And when the soil changes, the harvest inevitably changes with it. This is why awareness of thoughts is so powerful. It is like holding a pouch of seeds before you sow. Once they are scattered, once they take root, the effort to undo them is greater. But at the very moment of choosing, there is freedom. You may hold anger in your hand, recognize its sharpness, and set it aside. You may notice a seed of kindness and place it gently into the ground. Each choice becomes a shaping of destiny. In Buddhist psychology, these seeds are called bija, latent tendencies stored in the subconscious mind. Some seeds are wholesome, such as generosity, patience, and love. Others are unwholesome, such as greed, envy, and resentment. Whichever seeds are watered through thought, speech, and action, those are the ones that sprout. If you constantly dwell on fear, the seed of fear becomes strong, and soon it begins to dominate your garden. But if you turn your attention again and again to courage, the seed of courage grows, until one day it stands taller than fear itself. Rumi once wrote of the heart as a field, saying, "Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right-doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there." Imagine your own mind as that open field. Each morning, you step into it with the power to decide what you will plant. Will you scatter weeds of complaint, rehearsing every sorrow and disappointment? Or will you plant flowers of gratitude, noticing the small blessings that are so easily overlooked, the breath that carries you, the sun that warms you, the kindness of a stranger? Gratitude, once planted, multiplies. It draws bees of joy, birds of hope, winds of serenity. Complaints, once planted, grow thorns that entangle your steps and shadow your days. The truth is not hidden. It is right here. Every thought is a seed, and the harvest cannot be denied. If your life feels filled with hesitation, regret, or sorrow, look first to the seeds you have been planting. Do not condemn yourself for the weeds you find. Weeds are natural. They appear without effort. The task is simply to notice, to remove gently, and to replace with care. Tonight, as you rest, you might close your eyes and imagine the mind as a vast garden. See the seeds scattered within it. Notice which ones are sprouting strongly, and ask yourself, which of these do I want to water? Which of these shall I let wither? In this simple reflection, the work of transformation begins. There is no need for judgment. The weeds are not evil. They are simply unhelpful. Let them go, and they will fade. The flowers are not beyond reach. They are already here, waiting for your attention. So let the lesson sink gently into your heart. The mind is a garden, and every thought is a seed. Plant wisely, water carefully, and when the time comes, your harvest will be a reflection of the love, courage, and peace you chose to nurture. There is a gentle truth that reveals itself when you begin to watch your thoughts closely. Most of them are not chosen. They drift in like clouds, carried by winds you did not summon. One moment you are at ease, and then suddenly a memory surfaces, a mistake from years ago, a word spoken in anger, an image that stirs regret. You did not call for it, and yet it arrives. Another moment, a worry about tomorrow takes shape. And before you realize it, your body tenses as if the feared event were already happening. This is what it means to live without awareness, to be carried along by the current of thoughts without ever questioning where they lead. The Buddha often compared the mind to a monkey leaping from branch to branch, restless and never still. Without awareness, this monkey determines the direction of your life. It pulls you into fear, swings you into anger, drags you into distraction, and then leaves you exhausted. But the first step to freedom is simple notice. Awareness is like opening your eyes in a dark room. Suddenly, you see that the shadows were never as powerful as you believed. You see that the monkey is not you. It is only movement within you. Think of awareness as the gatekeeper of the mind. A fortress without a watchman is vulnerable to every intruder, thieves of doubt, soldiers of fear, merchants of gossip. Anyone can walk through the gate and take residence inside. But with awareness, you stand at the gate, observing who approaches. You do not need to fight angrily, nor do you need to slam the gate shut in panic. You simply see clearly. You know who is worthy to enter, and you know who must be turned away. In this simple act of seeing, mastery begins. There is an old parable, often told among different cultures, sometimes called the story of the two wolves. A grandfather tells his grandson that inside each person there are two wolves fighting. One is anger, envy, greed, fear. The other is kindness, compassion, patience, love. The boy asks, "Which wolf wins?" The grandfather replies, "The one you feed." From a Buddhist perspective, this story is not about violent struggle, but about mindfulness. Both wolves exist as seeds within the mind. Awareness allows you to notice which one is stirring, and then you decide which to nourish with attention. When fear appears, awareness says, "Ah, this is fear." When compassion arises, awareness says, "This is compassion." Without awareness, fear can masquerade as truth, and compassion can pass unnoticed. But with awareness, you see them clearly, and you understand that you have a choice. This is the beginning of liberation, the recognition that thoughts and emotions are not rulers, but guests. You are the host, and awareness is the key that determines how long each guest stays. Consider how often people drift through their days unaware. A colleague speaks a harsh word, and instantly the body reacts with anger. Hours later, the mind is still replaying the scene, as though carrying a fire inside. Or a stranger offers a small kindness, but lost in distraction, the moment passes unnoticed. In both cases, the power of life is lost because there was no watchman at the gate. When you practice awareness, the same situations unfold differently. The harsh word is heard, but instead of reacting blindly, you pause. You see the anger rising, you name it, and in naming it, you weaken its grip. The kindness of the stranger is noticed fully, received with gratitude, and it becomes a seed of joy you carry for the rest of the day. The Buddha described this process as sati, or mindfulness. To be mindful is not to control every thought, but to be fully present with them. It is like sitting by the riverbank and watching leaves float by. Some are bright and golden, others are dark and withered, but all of them flow past. Without awareness, you are swept into the river, tossed and turned by the current. With awareness, you remain on the bank, watching with clarity and calm. The leaves do not stop flowing, but you are no longer lost within them. There is great peace in this practice. Imagine sitting in meditation, breathing softly, and noticing the endless stream of thoughts. At first, it may feel overwhelming. Memories, worries, desire, judgments, all competing for attention. But slowly, as awareness deepens, you see their impermanence. Each thought rises and falls, just as each breath comes and goes. None of them are permanent. None of them define you. They are simply passing phenomena. When you truly see this, a lightness enters the heart. You no longer need to chase every thought or fear every emotion. You rest in the simple clarity of watching. This does not mean that negative thoughts never appear. They will. But when you are aware, they lose their power. A spark of anger that once became a wildfire is now noticed in its first flicker. A seed of fear that once grew into paralysis is now seen before it takes root. Awareness interrupts the chain. It is the space between stimulus and response, the sacred pause where choice becomes possible. In that pause, you can breathe. You can redirect. You can choose the thought that leads to peace rather than suffering. The Zen masters often spoke of awareness as returning home. They would say, when walking, just walk. When eating, just eat. To live this way is not simplistic, it is profound. It means that your awareness rests fully in the present moment, not lost in the branches of the past or the fog of the future. It means your mind is not a battlefield of unseen forces, but a clear sky where clouds drift freely. And when the sky is clear, even the storm is beautiful, because you see it for what it is, passing weather, not permanent truth. So, let this be your practice. Begin by noticing, when a thought arises, ask yourself, do I want to plant this seed? Will it grow into something I wish to harvest? If the answer is no, gently let it pass. If the answer is yes, water it with attention, nourish it with action, and watch it bloom. This is the work of the watchman, the gentle guardian of the mind. Tonight, as you listen, let your awareness be soft but steady. Notice the rhythm of your breath, the rise and fall of your chest, the simple flow of thoughts as they appear. Do not cling. Do not resist. Simply watch. Each thought is a guest. Each breath a reminder. Each moment a chance to choose. Awareness is the first gate. And once you pass through it, the path ahead becomes clearer, lighter, and filled with possibility. Fear is perhaps the most familiar of all uninvited guests in the mind. It slips in quietly, whispering warnings, painting vivid pictures of loss, and convincing us that danger is everywhere. Sometimes it is loud, like a storm that shakes the walls of your thoughts, and other times it is subtle, disguised as caution, hesitation, or overthinking. And yet, when you look closely, fear is nothing more than a shadow. It has no solid form of its own. It is born from imagination, from the mind's ability to project what has not yet happened, and then to treat it as if it were already real. The Buddha's life offers us a perfect example of how to meet fear without surrender. On the night of his awakening, as he sat beneath the Bodhi tree, Mara appeared the embodiment of fear, temptation, and illusion. Mara did not come quietly. He arrived with an army, with thunderous weapons, with winds meant to terrify. He brought with him the voices of doubt, saying, "You are not worthy. Who do you think you are to seek enlightenment? You will fail, as all others have failed." He even sent visions of pleasure, distractions meant to lure the Buddha away from his stillness. Any ordinary person might have trembled, might have fled, or fought back in anger. But the Buddha remained seated. He touched the earth with his right hand, and the earth bore witness to his resolve. Mara's armies dissolved like mist before the morning sun. This story is not just an ancient legend. It is a mirror of your own experience. Every time fear arises in your mind, Mara has come to visit. Every time doubt tells you that you cannot, Mara whispers in your ear. And every time you hesitate, shrinking from life's vastness, Mara smiles. The lesson is not to defeat fear with greater force, but to see through it. When you recognize that fear is illusion, its power diminishes. It no longer commands you. You sit, like the Buddha under the tree, unmoved. In daily life, fear often disguises itself as practicality. You want to speak your truth. But a voice says, "Better stay silent, you may be judged." You long to try something new, but another voice warns, "What if you fail?" These thoughts feel protective, as if fear were keeping you safe. Yet look deeper, and you will see that fear rarely protects, it confines. It builds walls around your possibilities, walls that exist only in the mind. When you move through fear with awareness, the walls crumble, and what once felt impossible becomes simply another step forward. Courage, in Buddhism, is not the absence of fear. It is the clear seeing that fear has no ultimate reality. Courage is not reckless action, but calm presence. Imagine a lake on a windy day, the surface disturbed by countless ripples. Fear is like that surface, restless and unsettled. But beneath the surface, the water is calm, still, undisturbed. Courage is remembering the depth of the lake, even when the surface trembles. It is knowing that the true self, the awareness that observes, cannot be harmed by passing storms of thought. Consider for a moment how often fear has shaped your choices. How many paths were left unexplored? How many dreams postponed? How many words left unsaid? Because fear whispered, "Not now, not you, not this." And yet, think also of the times you acted despite fear. Remember how alive you felt, how light, as though a burden had been lifted. That is the gift of courage. It does not erase fear, but transforms your relationship with it. Fear becomes a teacher, pointing to the places where growth is possible. Wherever fear is strongest, there lies the doorway to liberation. In the Zen tradition, there is a story of a monk who was traveling through the mountains at night. He encountered a wild tiger blocking his path. The tiger growled, its teeth glistening in the moonlight. The monk felt fear rise in his chest, but instead of fleeing, he bowed deeply and said, "Thank you, teacher." The tiger, startled, turned and walked away. The lesson is not about taming tigers, but about recognizing that fear itself can be a teacher. It reveals where attachment holds you, where the mind is still bound by illusion. By bowing to fear, you transform it into wisdom. When you practice mindfulness, fear becomes easier to recognize in its early stages. You notice the tightening in the stomach, the quickening of the breath, the restless cycle of thoughts. Instead of feeding these sensations with more worry, you pause, you breathe, you acknowledge. This is fear, and in that simple act, fear loses its grip. You see it not as a command, but as a passing cloud. The Buddha taught that all things are impermanent, and fear is no exception. It rises, it peaks, it fades. No fear has ever remained forever. Think also of how compassion dissolves fear. When you shift your focus from self-protection to caring for others, fear begins to shrink. A mother who fears for herself may hesitate, but when her child is in danger, she moves with courage beyond measure. Compassion expands the heart until fear no longer has room to dominate. In the same way, when you live with the intention to serve, to love, to bring peace, fear becomes small compared to the vastness of your purpose. This is why the teachings emphasize right view and right intention. When your vision is clear, fear cannot control you. When your intention is rooted in wisdom and compassion, you walk steadily, even if shadows surround you. Remember, the Buddha under the Bodhi tree, he did not banish Mara by force. He simply sat in truth, unmoved, and the illusions dissolved on their own. Tonight, let yourself rest in that same stillness. When fear arises, do not struggle against it, and do not run from it. Sit with it gently, breathe with it, and whisper inwardly, "You too are impermanent." Let courage arise, not as a battle cry, but as a quiet trust that beyond every fear there is peace. And as you rest, remember, fear is Mara's whisper, but courage is the earth itself, steady, silent, eternal. It is natural to want to push negative thoughts away. When anger rises, the instinct is to suppress it, to bury it deep, where no one can see. When jealousy stirs, we may try to cover it with forced politeness. When fear whispers, we attempt to silence it with distractions. And yet, if you observe carefully, you will see that suppression is not freedom. What is hidden does not disappear, it waits. Buried anger becomes bitterness. Concealed jealousy becomes quiet resentment. Ignored fear becomes anxiety. Suppression is like placing a heavy stone on top of weeds. For a time they may be unseen, but eventually they find a way to break through the cracks. The Buddha offered a different approach. Instead of suppression, he spoke of transformation. He said, "Hatred does not cease by hatred, but only by love. This is the eternal law." These words are a compass for the mind. When negative thoughts arise, the task is not to crush them with force, but to replace them with their opposites. Hatred is softened by love. Fear is transformed by courage. Doubt is answered with trust. This is not wishful thinking, it is deliberate mental discipline. Just as a gardener does not simply pull weeds but also plants flowers, the mind must replace what is harmful with what is wholesome. Imagine you are sitting in meditation and a surge of anger arises. Perhaps someone has wronged you, and the mind begins to replay the injury with increasing fire. In that moment, you have a choice. You can continue feeding the anger, watering the seed until it grows into full rage, or you can notice it and gently redirect your attention. You might recall something kind that person has done, or you might turn your thoughts to the countless beings who, like you, struggle and suffer. In this act of redirection, the energy of anger is transformed. It becomes compassion, or at least neutrality. Slowly, with practice, the habit shifts. This practice is sometimes called cultivating the Brahma Viharas, or the four immeasurable states of mind: loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. Each of these qualities can replace a negative state. Loving kindness replaces hatred. Compassion replaces cruelty. Sympathetic joy replaces envy. Equanimity replaces anxiety and clinging. By consciously planting these seeds, you transform the entire atmosphere of the mind. There is a story from the Zen tradition about a monk who was constantly criticized by others in his monastery. Instead of responding with anger, he would bow deeply and say, "Thank you for showing me where I am still attached." Over time, his critics grew frustrated because their words never provoked the reaction they expected. The monk had learned the art of transformation. Each harsh word became fuel for patience. Each insult an opportunity to practice humility. In this way, what could have been poison turned into medicine. Replacing negativity is not denial. It does not mean pretending that pain does not exist. If someone hurts you, the hurt is real. If you are afraid, the fear is real. To replace does not mean to lie to yourself. It means to see clearly and then choose a wiser response. When the mind whispers, "You are weak," you do not pretend the whisper was never there. You notice it. You recognize it. And then you answer, "I am learning. I am growing. I am stronger than before." Slowly, the old voice fades, and the new voice becomes dominant. Think also of how this practice applies to daily life. If you spend your time with people who complain, who gossip, who dwell constantly on what is wrong, your mind becomes filled with the same energy. But if you choose to spend time with those who inspire, who encourage, who uplift, your thoughts begin to mirror theirs. Replacement is not only about inner redirection, It is also about what you allow to enter from the outside. Guarding the mind means surrounding it with nourishment. Books, conversations, environments, even the music you hear, all of these are seeds. Choose wisely what you allow in, and you make replacement easier. There is an old image in Buddhist teaching. Thoughts are like guests who knock on the door of the house. Some bring gifts. Others bring trouble. You are the host. You cannot stop guests from knocking, but you can decide who comes in, who stays for tea, and who must be sent away. When anger knocks, you may greet it politely and say, "I see you," but then you open the door to compassion and invite it to sit. Slowly, compassion fills the room, and anger leaves on its own. This is the art of replacement, welcoming the guests who serve peace, while refusing to entertain those who bring harm. Consider the difference between rejection and replacement. Rejection alone leaves an empty space, and emptiness soon attracts another intruder. But replacement fills the space with strength. When fear is replaced by courage, there is no room for fear to return. When jealousy is replaced by joy, envy has no place to grow. This is why discipline in thought is so important. It is not about endlessly fighting against what you don't want. It is about actively cultivating what you do want. The process takes time. Habits of thought, like habits of behavior, are not changed overnight. If you have been feeding fear for years, it will not vanish in a day. But with steady practice, the balance shifts. Each time you replace anger with kindness, the seed of kindness grows stronger. Each time you replace doubt with trust, trust becomes more natural. Eventually, the garden of the mind is filled with so many wholesome plants that the weeds have little space to return. Even the act of noticing beauty can be a form of replacement. When sorrow weighs heavily, look at the sky at dawn, or listen to the sound of rain. In that simple act of attention, you replace the heaviness with a moment of wonder. When worry consumes you, take a breath and feel the rhythm of life moving through you. In that breath, you replace chaos with stillness. These small acts matter. They are seeds too, and they accumulate into great change. So remember, the teaching hatred is not ended by hatred, but by love. Fear is not ended by denial, but by courage. Doubt is not ended by avoidance, but by trust. Your task is not to suppress, nor to fight endlessly, but to transform. Each negative thought is an opportunity, each difficult emotion, a doorway. When you choose wisely, when you replace darkness with light, the entire landscape of your inner world begins to change. Tonight, let yourself practice gently. If a heavy thought arises, do not resist it harshly. Notice it, bow to it, and then choose its opposite. Replace anger with a thought of kindness. Replace worry with a vision of peace. Replace envy with gratitude. Do this softly, patiently, and trust that with each act of replacement, you are reshaping your destiny from within. The mind is often compared to a mirror, and this image has been used across many traditions to point toward the nature of reality. A mirror reflects without judgment, It does not decide what is beautiful and what is ugly. It does not cling to one image and reject another. It simply shows what is placed before it. In the same way, the outer world of your life reflects the inner state of your mind. If your thoughts are clouded with fear, the world appears threatening. If your heart is heavy with resentment, the world feels unjust. But if your mind is clear, compassionate, and steady, the same world becomes luminous. Even in difficult times, Lao Tzu, the ancient Taoist sage, wrote that the greatest wisdom is like water, soft, yielding, and clear. Water reflects the moon perfectly because it does not struggle to hold its shape. The mind, when still, becomes like that water. It mirrors reality as it is, without distortion. But when stirred by constant agitation, it can no longer reflect truth clearly. You may look into a muddy pond and see only confusion. Even though the water itself is capable of clarity, the problem is not with the pond, but with the movement within it. Buddhist teachings echo this same truth. The practice of meditation is not about creating something new, but about polishing the mirror of the mind so it can reflect reality as it truly is. When the dust of greed, hatred, and delusion covers the mirror, your perception of the world is distorted. You see enemies where there are none, obstacles where there are opportunities, and limitations where freedom is possible. But when the dust is cleared through mindfulness and compassion, the mirror shines again, and the world reflects peace. Think about a morning when you woke up already anxious. The day ahead seemed heavy, filled with problems waiting to unfold. And sure enough, each small inconvenience, a delayed bus, a sharp word from a colleague felt magnified, almost unbearable. Now, think of a day when you awoke with gratitude, perhaps after good rest or a moment of joy. The same inconveniences appeared, but they did not weigh you down. They were simply small ripples in an otherwise calm sea. The difference was not the world outside, but the mirror inside. The outer events remained the same, yet they reflected differently because your inner lens was different. Zen masters often speak of emptiness when describing the mind. Emptiness does not mean void or nothingness. It means spaciousness, the ability to hold everything without being attached to any single thing. When the mind is empty like the sky, clouds of thought can drift freely. Some clouds are dark, some are light, but the sky itself is never harmed. In the same way, when your awareness rests in emptiness, life's experiences, pleasant or painful, appear and pass without leaving permanent scars. The mirror remains whole. The sky remains vast, regardless of what moves across it. This teaching is deeply practical. When you understand the mind as a mirror, you stop blaming the reflection for what you see. If the image is distorted, you clean the mirror. If the world appears hostile, you tend to your inner state. Just as no one tries to fix a crooked reflection by bending the mirror's surface, you do not fix suffering by endlessly rearranging the outer world. You begin within. Change the clarity of your mind, and the reflection will shift naturally. Consider how this applies to relationships. If you approach another person with suspicion, even their kindest gesture may seem insincere. If you carry insecurity, every silence feels like rejection. Yet, when your mind is calm and open, you see more clearly. A silence is just silence. A gesture is simply what it is. The other person has not changed the mirror through which you see them has. This is why compassion begins within. When the mind reflects kindness, it naturally perceives kindness in others. When it reflects anger, it sees enemies everywhere. There is a story told in Zen about a monk who kept his room impeccably clean. When asked why, he said, "Because when the room is clear, my mind is clear. And when my mind is clear, the whole world is clear." The cleanliness of the room was not the true goal. It was a mirror of the state of his awareness. In the same way, your outer life mirrors your inner life. If chaos reigns inside, chaos appears outside. If harmony reigns inside, harmony blossoms outside. This does not mean that suffering in the world disappears when the mind is clear. Pain still exists. Loss still happens. But the way you meet these experiences changes. A clear mirror reflects both joy and sorrow without distortion. You may still feel grief when a loved one passes, but it will be grief held within the vastness of compassion, not grief twisted by anger or regret. You may still feel fear in uncertain times, but it will be fear seen with clarity, not fear magnified into panic. The world does not stop reflecting challenges, but the way you see them transforms. Think of your daily practice as polishing the mirror. Every time you sit in silence and watch your breath, you wipe away a little dust. Every time you respond with kindness instead of anger, you remove another smudge. Every time you let go of unnecessary worry, the mirror grows brighter. Slowly, with patience, the surface becomes clear, and what once appeared distorted begins to shine. Sometimes people ask, "How do I know if my practice is working?" The answer is simple. Look at your reflections. Do you find yourself less reactive? Do you notice beauty more often? Do you experience peace even when conditions are not perfect? These are signs that the mirror of the mind is becoming clearer. The world has not necessarily changed, but your relationship to it has. That is the fruit of practice. Tonight, as you listen, you might picture your mind as a mirror. Notice what it reflects right now. Are the images clouded by old dust, resentments, worries, fears? Or is there clarity, even if only in small patches? Do not judge what you see. Simply polish gently with awareness, with breath, with compassion. In time, the mirror will shine, and life will reflect back to you the peace that has always been waiting within. Thoughts do not vanish the moment they appear. They linger, and if repeated often enough, they create grooves in the mind. These grooves are like channels through which the stream of your awareness flows again and again. Over time, the channels deepen, and the water naturally runs in the same direction, forming habits of thought that feel nearly automatic. Buddhism names these grooves sanskaras, mental formations shaped by repetition. They are the architecture of karma, not as a cosmic punishment, but as the simple unfolding of cause and effect. If you consistently dwell on fear, the channel of fear grows wider, and the mind easily slips into it, even when circumstances do not require it. If you often replay failures, the path of defeat becomes familiar, and you begin to walk it without thinking. But when you cultivate courage and compassion, those two become deep grooves. Eventually, when life shakes you, the mind naturally flows toward resilience, toward love, toward wisdom. This is why dominant thoughts, the ones you return to daily, shape your destiny. Consider how this operates in everyday life. A person who constantly repeats, "I cannot," begins to act as if incapacity is their truth. They decline opportunities, avoid challenges, and retreat from possibility, not because reality has forbidden them, but because their own thoughts have built walls. Another person, repeating, "I will learn, I will grow," finds themselves moving steadily forward. Even when difficulties arise, they may stumble, but the groove of persistence pulls them up again. The difference between the two lies not in fate or fortune, but in the thoughts that have been repeated until they became patterns. The Buddha described karma in simple terms. Mind is the forerunner of all things. Every action begins first as thought. Every habit begins as a single decision repeated until it becomes second nature. This means your future is not written in stone. It is written in the living clay of your thoughts, shaped by what you choose to cultivate again and again. The tragedy is that many people remain unaware of this power. They scatter seeds of negativity, daily complaints, fears, criticisms, and then wonder why their life feels heavy. They live in a garden overgrown with weeds, never realizing they are the ones who planted them. But awareness opens another path. When you notice the grooves of the mind, you can decide which ones to deepen and which ones to abandon. Think of it like walking through a forest. There is a wide, familiar trail, trodden by years of footsteps. You can walk it without effort, but it always leads to the same place. Nearby, there is a faint, overgrown path, hardly visible. The first steps are difficult, filled with resistance. But if you continue to walk it daily, the trail becomes clearer, easier, natural. So too with thoughts. The familiar groove of worry may feel automatic now, but each time you choose gratitude instead, you carve a new path. Over time, the path of gratitude becomes the natural one. Zen teachers often remind their students, habits of mind are stronger than habits of body. A hand can be retrained, a posture adjusted, but the subtle leanings of the mind require constant vigilance. And yet, once these mental habits shift, life itself begins to change. A habit of kindness reshapes relationships. A habit of patience alters the pace of your days. A habit of mindfulness transforms even ordinary moments into gateways of peace. Think of an artist working with clay. Each press of the fingers leaves a mark. At first, the form is rough, undefined, but with each touch, The shape emerges. Your mind is both the clay and the sculptor. Every thought is a press of the fingers. If you repeat despair, you mold despair. If you repeat hope, you shape hope. The sculpture of your life is not accidental. It is the result of countless mental impressions, small but steady, that accumulate into form. This understanding of sanskaras also explains why transformation requires patience. Many people expect instant change, as though one moment of positivity could erase years of negativity. But the grooves of the mind do not vanish overnight. A riverbed, carved by centuries of water, does not disappear with one rainfall. It requires steady redirection, repeated choice, persistent awareness. With time, the new channel forms, and the water flows there naturally. Transformation is not a matter of force, but of consistency. The Buddha compared the process to training an ox. At first, the ox resists the rope, pulling wildly, straining against guidance. But with patient repetition, the ox learns to walk calmly, to follow the path without struggle. Your mind, too, may resist. It will return again and again to old grooves. But if you remain steady, gently bringing it back each time, eventually it learns. The grooves of fear are replaced by grooves of courage. The grooves of anger are replaced by grooves of compassion. The ox, once unruly, becomes a faithful companion. There is also a caution here. Just as wholesome grooves grow stronger with repetition, so do unwholesome ones. If you rehearse grievances every night, if you feed resentment daily, those grooves deepen until they become difficult to escape. This is why the Buddha urged mindfulness not as abstract philosophy, but as a practical tool. When you are mindful, you catch yourself walking the old path. You pause, you breathe, you redirect. Each pause weakens the old groove, and each redirection strengthens the new one. Consider this in the quiet moments of your own day. When the mind wanders, ask yourself, what path am I walking now? Am I feeding fear or feeding trust? Am I deepening envy or deepening gratitude? Do not answer with harsh judgment. Simply notice, and then choose wisely. The path you repeat will become the path you live. The beauty of this teaching is that it offers freedom at any moment. No matter how long you have walked, the old trails of worry or regret, you can step off them today. The first steps may feel awkward, but each choice matters. Each thought of kindness weakens the habit of anger. Each breath of mindfulness loosens the grip of distraction. Each act of courage fills the groove of fear with new earth, making way for another kind of growth. Tonight, as you lie in stillness, reflect on the grooves in your own mind. Which ones feel deep and familiar? Which ones do you wish to leave behind? Imagine yourself walking a new path through the forest of thought. At first, the way is narrow, but each step clears the way. With patience, the trail widens, and soon it becomes the natural road. This is how karma is rewritten not by fate imposed from outside, but by steady cultivation within. Remember, your dominant thoughts are the architects of your destiny. They are not fleeting shadows, but builders of patterns, carving grooves that shape your steps. Be mindful of what you repeat. For what you repeat, you become. Every journey begins with intention. Before a traveler sets out, she decides her direction, whether toward the mountains, the river, or the quiet village beyond the fields. Without intention, even the strongest legs wander aimlessly. The same is true of the mind. It does not matter how much energy or focus you carry. If your thoughts are not aligned with clear intention, the path bends into confusion. In Buddhist teaching, this principle is captured in the Noble Eightfold Path, where right intention follows immediately after right view. It is not enough to see clearly, you must also intend wisely, directing the mind toward compassion, peace, and freedom. Visualization, when approached with mindfulness, is nothing other than right intention made visible. It is the practice of holding a vision of yourself and your life with clarity and conviction, not as fantasy, but as a compass for the heart. When you see yourself practicing patience, you are setting the intention to respond calmly instead of harshly. When you see yourself walking courageously through difficulty, you are strengthening the groove of resilience. Visualization is not about escaping reality, but about planting the seeds of the reality you wish to grow. Think of a musician preparing for a performance. Long before she steps onto the stage, she sees herself playing the notes with grace. Hears the melody flowing through her mind. Feels the movement of her hands across the instrument. By the time the moment arrives, her body responds as if it has already lived the music. This is the quiet power of visualization. It tells the mind what to expect, and the body follows. But when this practice is guided by Buddhist wisdom, it moves beyond personal success. It becomes a training of intention toward qualities that liberate, not just accomplishments that impress. The Buddha taught that thoughts shape emotions, emotions shape actions, and actions shape destiny. If you want compassion in your life, you must first intend compassion in your thoughts. If you want freedom from fear, you must see yourself walking fearlessly in the mind before your steps can embody it. This is why meditation often begins with visualization. In loving kindness practice, you picture yourself surrounded by warmth and safety. You repeat, "May I be happy. May I be free from suffering." Then you extend the vision outward to loved ones, to strangers, even to those who cause you difficulty. May you be happy. May you be free from suffering. At first, it may feel like imagination, but with repetition, the intention becomes real. Slowly, the heart aligns with the vision, and compassion begins to flow naturally. Some people dismiss visualization as mere daydreaming, but the Buddha himself used imagery to guide his students. He described the mind as a charioteer guiding horses, as a lamp dispelling darkness, as a field to be cultivated. These images were not idle poetry, they were tools to direct intention. In the same way, when you imagine yourself as calm, strong, or compassionate, you are shaping the charioteer. You are reminding the horses where to run. The difference between fantasy and right intention lies in awareness. Fantasy is passive, a pleasant escape that fades when reality returns. Right intention is active, a conscious planting of seeds that influence how you live each day. If you imagine success without effort, it is fantasy. If you visualize yourself practicing patience during conflict and then bring that vision into reality, it is intention. The purpose is not to dream idly, but to train the mind so that when the moment comes, your response follows the groove you have already rehearsed. Consider how this works in moments of difficulty. Suppose you often feel overwhelmed in conversations with someone critical. The habitual groove is defensiveness, anger, or withdrawal. But if you spend time visualizing yourself, responding calmly, listening without tension, breathing before speaking, answering with clarity, then when the situation arises, your mind already knows the way. It does not stumble into the old pattern so easily. Instead, it remembers the rehearsal and follows the new path. In this way, visualization becomes a form of mental discipline. There is a Zen story of a young monk who struggled with fear of speaking before his teacher. Every time he was asked to share, his voice shook and his thoughts scattered. An older monk advised him, "Each night before you sleep, imagine yourself standing before the teacher, breathing calmly, speaking with ease. See it until it feels natural." The young monk practiced faithfully. After weeks, when he next stood before his teacher, his voice no longer trembled. The vision had become reality. The story reminds us that intention, repeated with sincerity, reshapes the very grooves of the mind. But the Buddha also warned intention without action is incomplete. To visualize patience is valuable, but it must be lived in small moments each day. To see yourself compassionate is powerful, but it must translate into words and gestures that ease the suffering of others. Visualization sets the compass, but it is your steps that carry you forward. Without steps, the vision remains a painting on the wall, beautiful but unmoving. With steps, the painting becomes the road beneath your feet. There is also a deeper layer to right intention. It is not only about what you want to achieve, but about why you want it. If your vision is fueled by greed or pride, then even if it comes true, it may not bring peace. But if your vision is rooted in compassion, in the wish to grow, not just for yourself, but for all beings, then the fruits of that vision nourish everyone. This is why the Eightfold Path places right intention beside right view. Intention must be aligned with wisdom. Only then does visualization become a tool of liberation, not another trap of desire. Think of a candle lighting another candle. The flame of intention passes from one wick to another, not diminished, but multiplied. In the same way, when you set your intention for peace and compassion, you light a candle within yourself. That light touches others, sometimes without words. They see your calm presence, your steady responses, your quiet strength, and they too begin to feel calmer, steadier, stronger. The flame spreads, not by force, but by simple being. Tonight, as you rest, you might try a small visualization. Close your eyes and imagine yourself tomorrow, waking with ease, breathing deeply, moving through the day with calm awareness. See yourself meeting challenges without panic, speaking with kindness, walking with steadiness. Imagine the faces of those you meet, softening in response to your presence. Hold the vision gently, not as fantasy, but as intention. Let it settle into your heart like a seed. And then, when the morning comes, take one step to make it real. Visualization is not escape. It is not the indulgence of fantasy. It is the shaping of intention, the training of the mind, the directing of the inner compass. And when practiced with awareness and compassion, it becomes one of the most powerful tools of the path. For what you see clearly in the mind, you begin to embody in the body. And what you embody becomes the world you walk in. The work of the mind cannot be left to chance. Just as a field becomes overrun with weeds if the farmer neglects it, the mind becomes tangled with confusion if it is not tended daily. Training the mind is not a matter of sudden transformation, but of steady practice, repeated quietly and faithfully. Like drops of water, carving stone. The Buddha compared practice to carrying water in a jar. If you pour steadily, even if only a little each day, the jar will fill. But if you forget and neglect, the jar remains empty, no matter how much you intend for it to be full. Daily practice is the vessel that holds your intention. It does not need to be dramatic or lengthy. In fact, the smallest rituals, when done consistently, reshape the mind more profoundly than occasional grand gestures. A morning of quiet breathing, a moment of gratitude before eating, a gentle reflection before sleep. Each one is like a stroke of the brush, painting the canvas of the mind. Over time, the picture becomes clear. Think of how monks live in monasteries. Their days are marked by rhythm bells ringing at dawn, chants before meals, meditation at seat times, evening recitations. This rhythm is not meant to enslave them, but to free them. By repeating the same practices, the mind is trained to return to awareness again and again. What once required effort becomes natural. What once felt unfamiliar becomes home. You may not live in a monastery, but you too can shape your life with small rhythms of mindfulness. Begin with the morning. The mind upon waking is soft, like clay before it hardens in the sun. Whatever impressions you place upon it first will shape the form of the day. If you immediately reach for distractions, news filled with fear, social media buzzing with envy, the clay hardens into anxiety. But if you begin with stillness, with breath, with an intention for peace, the clay takes a different form. Your day unfolds in the image of the first impression. So perhaps, before rising, place a hand on your chest, feel the breath, and whisper inwardly, "May today be guided by peace." Such a small act plants a seed that grows quietly all day. Throughout the day, short pauses can serve as reminders. A single mindful breath while waiting in line, a moment of silence before answering the phone, a gentle smile to a stranger. These are not interruptions, but realignments. They pull you back into presence. reminding you that each moment is an opportunity to choose awareness over habit. Think of them as stepping stones placed across a rushing river. Each one helps you cross without being swept away. In the evening, the mind again is malleable. Before sleep, it is wise to review the day, not with harsh judgment, but with gentle awareness. Notice the moments when anger took hold, or when fear spoke loudly. Acknowledge them without blame, and then let them go. Also, notice the moments of kindness, the times you showed patience, the times you chose courage. Celebrate them quietly. In this way, the day ends not in regret but in understanding, not in heaviness but in release. As the Buddha said, little by little, a person becomes good. As a pot fills with water, drop by drop. Daily practice is like sharpening a blade. Left untouched, the edge dulls, but if honed each day, even lightly, the blade remains ready. The mind, too, dulls when left in distraction, but sharpens when attended with care. This sharpening does not make life harsher, it makes life clearer. You cut through confusion, through illusion, through the tangle of unnecessary worry. And what remains is simplicity. Zen masters often emphasize the value of ordinary acts done with full attention. Sweeping the floor is not only cleaning, it is also clearing the mind. Washing the dishes is not only a task, it is polishing awareness. Drinking tea is not only quenching thirst, it is tasting the present moment. In this way, every daily act becomes practice. You need not wait for special times or places. Wherever you are, awareness can be cultivated. There is a story of a monk who was asked what his great practice was. He replied, "When I eat, I eat. When I walk, I walk. When I sleep, I sleep." The listener laughed, thinking it too simple. But the monk explained, most people, when they eat, are already walking in their minds. When they walk, they are still chewing yesterday's food. When they sleep, they dream of tomorrow's work. My practice is to be here, now. This is the essence of daily training, not to complicate life with elaborate rituals, but to bring full presence into whatever you are already doing. Even so, setting aside dedicated times for meditation strengthens the practice. Begin with just a few minutes, sitting quietly, following the breath. Watch the thoughts rise and fall like waves. Do not chase them. Do not resist them. Let them come and go, while your awareness remains steady like the ocean beneath. With time, these moments of stillness seep into the rest of the day. You carry the calm of meditation into conversations, into work, into the way you move through the world. Another powerful practice is gratitude. Each morning or evening, reflect on 3 things you are grateful for. They may be as simple as a breath, a smile, or the warmth of sunlight. Gratitude shifts the focus of the mind from what is lacking to what is present, from scarcity to abundance. It waters seeds of joy that might otherwise be overlooked. With repetition, gratitude becomes a natural habit, a groove the mind slips into easily, and it transforms the way you see life. It is also important to recognize that practice is not about perfection. There will be days when the mind resists, when meditation feels restless, when gratitude feels forced. This too is part of the path. The point is not to achieve flawless awareness, but to return again and again. No matter how many times you wander, each return is itself an act of strength. Like a traveler who, after taking the wrong road, finds the way back. The wandering is not failure. The return is victory. Tonight, reflect on what small daily rhythms you might cultivate. Perhaps one mindful breath before meals. Perhaps a short evening review of your day. Perhaps a morning intention whispered in silence. Whatever it is, let it be gentle. Let it be consistent. Over time, these small practices become powerful forces. They shape the grooves of the mind, steady the heart, and align your life with the peace you seek. Remember, great change does not come from occasional effort, but from daily practice. Just as the mountain is shaped not by a single storm, but by countless drops of rain, the mind is shaped not by rare inspiration, but by steady cultivation. Begin each day as the gardener, tending your inner field, with patience, with gentleness, with consistency. You will watch the seeds of awareness grow into a life of clarity and calm. The mind is not only shaped by what you think, but also by what you allow to enter. Every sound, every sight, every word carries weight. What you consume through your eyes and ears becomes food for the heart. In Buddhism, this is called sense restraint, not in the harsh sense of denial, but in the wise act of protecting your inner world. Just as you would not allow poison into your body, you must also be careful not to allow poison into your mind. Consider how much of daily life is filled with noise. News reports drenched in fear, conversations laced with gossip, advertisements whispering that you are not enough until you buy more, have more, become more. Each of these enters through the senses and leaves an imprint. At first it may seem small, but like drops of water on stone, repeated impressions carve deep grooves. Soon you find yourself anxious without knowing why, restless without clear cause, dissatisfied even when nothing is missing. The mind has been fed with poison disguised as ordinary information. This is why the Buddha urged his disciples to be mindful of the senses, to guard the gates of the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. He was not calling for withdrawal from the world, but for conscious choice. When you decide what you will allow inside, you reclaim authority over your own thoughts. You choose nourishment over poison, clarity over confusion, peace over agitation. Think of it like guarding a fortress. A wise ruler does not allow anyone to enter without question. Friends are welcomed, allies are honored, but enemies are kept outside the walls. In the same way, the mind must be protected. Uplifting words, acts of kindness, and teachings of wisdom strengthen the inner fortress. But negativity, cynicism, and cruelty, if allowed to enter, weaken it from within. Each time you let in voices that belittle, Your own thoughts echo them. Each time you let in fear-filled stories, your heart beats faster. Guarding the senses is not rejection of life, but protection of your inner treasure. You can see this truth clearly in your own experience. Notice how you feel after spending time with someone who is constantly complaining. Their words hang in your mind long after the conversation ends. Now, think of how you feel after being with someone calm and kind. Their presence lingers too, but as warmth, as steadiness. The outer influence becomes an inner seed. The same happens with what you watch, what you read, what you listen to. If you fill your ears with anger, anger echoes within. If you fill your eyes with beauty, beauty reflects within. Zen teachers often remind their students that the mind is like a garden surrounded by 6 gates, one for each sense. If the gates are left open, wild animals wander in and trample the flowers. But if the gardener watches carefully, opening only to what nourishes, the garden flourishes. This does not mean closing yourself off from the world entirely. It means choosing wisely. You cannot control every sound you hear or every image you see, but you can choose what you dwell on, what you seek out, what you allow to repeat. There is a story of a monk who lived near a noisy marketplace. Every day, he heard the shouting of merchants, the clamor of bargaining, the occasional harsh words of frustration. At first, he found it distracting, even irritating. But instead of moving away, he chose to practice sense restraint differently. He began listening with awareness, noticing each sound without judgment. The noise no longer became poison because he did not feed it with reaction. He allowed it to pass like clouds across the sky. This story reminds us that guarding the senses does not mean fleeing the world, but meeting it with wisdom. In modern life, this practice is perhaps more important than ever. We carry small windows in our pockets that stream endless information. Every scroll, every click is another seed planted in the soil of the mind. Ask yourself, what am I planting? Do these words, these images, these voices lift me or weigh me down? Do they help me grow in compassion and clarity? Or do they pull me into fear and anger? Awareness of consumption is as vital as awareness of food. The body grows from what it eats, and the mind grows from what it takes in. At the same time, sense restraint is not about harsh avoidance. It is about balance. Just as the body needs healthy food but can tolerate small indulgences, the mind needs nourishment but can meet challenges without collapse. If you hear harsh words, you need not carry them as truth. If you see suffering, you need not turn away. Instead, you can let these impressions deepen your compassion without poisoning your peace. This is the middle path, neither indulgence nor denial, but wise choice guided by awareness. Daily practice makes this easier. In the morning, choose one nourishing input, perhaps a passage of wisdom, a poem, or a moment of silence with the sound of birds. In the evening, reflect on what you allowed in. Was it nourishing? Did it strengthen your mind or weaken it over time? This reflection sharpens discernment. You begin to notice immediately when something does not serve you. and you let it pass without dwelling. The Buddha once said, "Whatever a monk frequently thinks and ponders upon, that will become the inclination of his mind." This teaching is as true for you as it was for his disciples. What you frequently allow through the senses becomes what you frequently think about. And what you frequently think about becomes who you are. To live wisely is to guard the gates with care, opening only to what aligns with peace. Tonight, as you listen, imagine your mind as a house with many doors. At each door stands a guard. Some guards are sleepy, letting anyone walk through. Some are vigilant, turning away what does not belong. Ask yourself, how do you wish your guards to serve you? Will you allow fear to enter without question? Will you welcome anger as a guest? Or will you choose instead to open the door to kindness, to gratitude, to beauty? The choice is yours. Remember, what you allow in through the senses shapes the world you live in. Guard the gates not with harshness but with wisdom, not with fear but with care. In this way, you protect your mind as the most precious treasure you carry. And when the senses are wisely tended, the inner world becomes calm, clear, and strong, reflecting peace in every direction. It is easy to believe that you are the stream of thoughts running through your head, that each worry, each memory, each impulse defines who you are. From morning until night, thoughts appear in endless succession, and because they seem constant, you may mistake them for your identity. Yet the Buddha taught a different truth, one that feels both liberating and unsettling. You are not your thoughts. They arise, they pass, but they are not the essence of who you are. The teaching of anatta, or non-self, reveals that what you call I is not a fixed entity. The body changes, the feelings change, the perceptions shift, the thoughts flicker and fade. None of them can be held onto as permanent. You cannot say, "I am my anger," because the anger appears and then disappears. You cannot say, "I am my joy," because joy too comes and goes. Thoughts are like visitors in a guest house, and you are the spacious home that holds them, not the guests themselves. Consider the sky. Cloud drift across it, some light and playful, some dark and heavy with rain. If you mistake yourself for the cloud, you believe you are always changing, always storming, always vanishing. But if you recognize that you are the sky itself, then the clouds are simply movements within you. They come, they go, but the vastness remains untouched. This is the shift that comes with realizing you are not your thoughts. Zen masters often remind their students, do not identify with the passing. One teacher once held up a mirror and said, when a bird flies past, its reflection appears, but the mirror is not the bird. Your mind is that mirror. Thoughts appear in it, but they are not you. When you realize this, you are no longer enslaved by every voice that arises. You do not need to follow anger into conflict or fear into paralysis. You can observe, acknowledge, and let them drift away. This does not mean ignoring thoughts. It means watching them with clarity, seeing their impermanence. Imagine sitting by a riverbank. The water flows continuously, carrying leaves, twigs, sometimes even entire branches. Each thought is like one of these objects floating downstream. If you mistake yourself for the leaf, you are carried away. But if you sit on the bank, you see the flow without being lost in it. Thoughts still move, but you remain steady. There is freedom in this realization. Many people suffer because they believe their negative thoughts are their truth. A person thinks, "I am unworthy," and believes that is who they are. Another thinks, "I am always anxious," and accepts it as permanent identity. But when you recognize these are only thoughts, you see they do not define you. They are conditions arising from past experiences, from the environment, from the body's chemistry. They appear, they fade. They are not the unchanging core of your being. The Buddha once used the image of a chariot to explain this. He asked, "What is a chariot? Is it the wheels, the axle, the seat, the frame? Each part is not the chariot. Yet, together they form what you call a chariot. In the same way, what you call I is a collection of body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. None of them alone is the self, and together they are still impermanent, changing from moment to moment. To cling to any one part as me is to suffer. To see their impermanence is to find freedom in daily life. This practice becomes deeply healing. When a harsh thought arises, "I am not enough," instead of accepting it as identity, you say, "This is a thought of not enoughness." When fear arises, "I will fail," you say, "This is a thought of failure." By naming it, you separate from it. You remind yourself that it is not who you are, but simply an event occurring in the mind. Like a bird crossing the sky, it appears and disappears, leaving no permanent trace. This is also why mindfulness of breathing is such a central practice. The breath is always present, always moving, and yet it is not tied to any thought. When you anchor yourself in the breath, you step back from identification with thoughts. You feel the body breathing. You rest in awareness, and you see thoughts rise and fall, like ripples on the surface of a lake. The lake remains. The ripples pass. There is a Zen story of a student who asked his master, "Who am I?" "Truly," the master replied. "Who is asking?" The student fell silent, realizing that every answer he might give his name, his role, his feelings, his thoughts was temporary. None of them could capture his essence. The true self, if it can be called that, is the awareness behind all labels, the witness of all change. It is not bound by the content of thought. Think about how liberating this is. If you are not your thoughts, then you are not chained to every fear or regret. You are not reduced to your mistakes, nor inflated by your successes. You are the awareness in which both appear. This does not mean you ignore responsibility or deny feelings. It means you see them with perspective. You act wisely, not reactively. You respond from clarity, not from blind identification. In Buddhist psychology, this perspective creates space between the arising of thought and the act of identifying with it. there is a moment of freedom. In that moment, you can choose. You can say, "I see you, thought, but I will not follow you." This is how old grooves lose their power. Each time you refuse to identify with a thought, the groove weakens. Each time you rest in awareness instead, the space of freedom widens. Tonight, as you rest, try this practice. When a thought arises, do not push it away, and do not cling to it. Simply say to yourself, "This is a thought, nothing more." Watch it as you would watch a cloud drifting across the sky. Notice how it changes, how it dissolves. Feel the stillness that remains when it passes. In this way, you train yourself to see thoughts for what they are: temporary, insubstantial, not you. You are not your anger. You are not your fear. You are not your past, nor even your hopes for the future. You are the awareness that notices them, the vast sky in which all weather passes. Hold to this truth, and you will find a freedom deeper than any thought can offer. There are times when your inner world feels heavy, as though every thought you carry vibrates with worry, fear, or anger. It is in these moments that you begin to sense how powerfully the quality of your thoughts determines the quality of your life. The Buddha taught that the mind is the forerunner of all things. Speak or act with a pure mind, and happiness follows as surely as your shadow. Speak or act with a troubled mind, and suffering follows just as faithfully. This is not a threat, nor a punishment, but a description of how life unfolds. Your inner vibration, the energy created by your most dominant thoughts and feelings, shapes the reality you walk into. When you dwell on resentment, you notice slights more easily. When you cling to fear, you see danger in places where none exists. But when you cultivate compassion, you begin to sense gentleness even in strangers. When you hold patience, the world seems to move more kindly. It is as if the world is a mirror reflecting your inner state, and though you cannot control every circumstance, you can influence what you see by changing what you carry. Rumi, the Sufi poet, described the human heart as a guest house. Each morning, a new arrival comes: joy, depression, meanness, excitement, despair. Welcome and entertain them all. He wrote, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. This teaching harmonizes with Buddhism, which reminds us that no thought or emotion is final, and no visitor is permanent. Fear may arrive, knocking loudly, but it is only a guest. Anger may enter, but it cannot stay forever. When you treat these inner states as visitors, you free yourself from the illusion that they are who you are. You meet them with awareness, perhaps even with compassion, and you let them pass when it is time. But here lies the subtle practice. Though every visitor has a right to appear, not every visitor should be entertained. You can welcome anger without feeding it. You can acknowledge fear without giving it a throne. To shift your inner vibration is to choose where you place your attention, which guests you invite to stay for tea. You notice sorrow, but you invite gratitude to sit beside it. You recognize fear, but you make space for courage to stand alongside it. Slowly, the balance shifts. The vibration of your inner world changes, and life begins to reflect that shift. Imagine a tuning fork struck in a quiet room. Its sound fills the space, and nearby objects begin to vibrate in resonance. In the same way, the frequency of your dominant thoughts creates resonance in your life. If your mind is tuned to fear, you will notice every echo of fear in the world around you. If it is tuned to compassion, you will notice compassion reflected back. Life does not change instantly, but perception does. And perception is the lens through which you live. The Buddha himself embodied this shift of vibration. Wherever he walked, people felt calm. Even animals grew still in his presence. This was not magic, it was the natural reflection of his inner state. A mind filled with compassion radiates peace outwardly, affecting all who come near. You have likely felt this in your own life. There are people whose presence soothes you without a word, and others whose agitation unsettles you, even when they are silent. This is the subtle energy of the mind. It cannot be hidden, and it is shared constantly. So the question becomes, how do you shift your own inner vibration? The answer is both simple and profound: through mindfulness, through compassion, through deliberate practice of wholesome states. When anger arises, pause and breathe. Notice the fire, but instead of fueling it, turn to thoughts of kindness, even if small. When fear grows loud, respond with a single act of courage, however small. Each choice is like plucking a new note on the instrument of the mind. With repetition, the new note becomes the dominant song. Consider the practice of loving kindness meditation. You sit quietly, breathe gently, and repeat phrases: may I be safe, may I be happy, may I be peaceful, may I be free from suffering. Then you extend the same wishes outward. May you be safe, may you be happy, may you be peaceful. At first, these words may feel mechanical, but over time, they begin to shift the heart. The vibration of kindness becomes more natural, and soon it spills into daily life. You find yourself less reactive, more patient, more compassionate. The world has not changed, but your vibration has, and the world mirrors it back to you. In Zen practice, there is also the teaching of suchness, to see things exactly as they are, without adding judgment or story. When you see clearly, without layers of fear or expectation, your vibration aligns with reality itself. This alignment creates peace. A difficult situation no longer feels like punishment, but like part of the unfolding of life. The mind grows spacious, less cluttered with resistance, more open to what is, and in that openness, calm arises naturally. It is important to note that shifting vibration does not mean rejecting negative emotions. To push them away harshly is only another form of attachment. Instead, you meet them with mindfulness. You say, this is anger, this is fear, this is sorrow. You bow to them as guests, and then you choose where to focus your attention. In doing so, you neither deny their presence nor surrender your power. You acknowledge, and then you redirect. Think also of gratitude. Gratitude is one of the most powerful ways to shift the heart. When you pause to notice even the smallest blessing, the breath in your lungs, the warmth of sunlight, the kindness of a stranger, you lift your vibration immediately. Gratitude is like sunlight breaking through clouds. The sky may not be perfectly clear, but the presence of light changes everything. Tonight, as you listen, consider your own guest, house of the heart. Who has visited today? Which guests did you allow to linger? Which ones drained your energy? And which ones nourished it? Do not judge your choices, but notice them. And then imagine yourself inviting new guests. Tomorrow, kindness, patience, gratitude, trust. See them seated around the table of your mind, sharing space with whatever else arrives. Feel how the atmosphere shifts when compassion is present. When joy is given a chair, your life is a reflection of your inner vibration. Change the guests you entertain, and the reflection changes. Choose compassion, and compassion echoes back. Choose gratitude, and gratitude multiplies. Choose patience, and life slows to meet you. This is not fantasy, it is law. As sure as the shadow follows the form, so let the practice be simple. Watch the visitors. Welcome them, but choose your companions wisely. Shift the vibration of your inner world, and the outer world cannot help but reflect the light you carry. There is a chain that links every thought to every result you see in your life. It begins in the invisible world of the mind and stretches outward into the visible world of action and circumstance. The Buddha described it clearly. With our thoughts, we make the world. This is not poetry, but a map of cause and effect. Thoughts shape emotions. Emotions influence actions. Action create habit. Habit carve destiny. When you look closely at your life, you can trace every step back to the thoughts that began it. Consider a moment when you felt powerless. Perhaps the thought arose, "I cannot handle this." That thought created the feeling of fear. Fear then made your body tense, your choices hesitant, your actions small. The result was retreat, avoidance, missed opportunity. But consider another moment when the thought was different. "I will do my best." That thought created hope. Hope softened the body, steadied the breath, and encouraged you to try. The result was progress, even if imperfect. The outer difference may have seemed small, but the inner thought shaped the entire chain. This is why mindfulness of thought is not a minor practice. It is the root of everything. To ignore thoughts is to ignore the seeds of your own life. To attend to them with awareness is to take the reins of destiny into your own hands. Buddhist psychology explains this chain in detail. First, there is contact, something seen, heard, touched, remembered. Contact gives rise to feeling pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. From feeling comes perception, the mind's interpretation. From perception comes thought, and from thought arises craving or aversion. That craving leads to action, and action creates results. When you are unaware, The chain unfolds automatically. But when you are mindful, you can step in at any point. You can interrupt the cycle. You can choose a different response. And the chain changes course. Think of anger as an example. Someone criticizes you. The contact is their words. The feeling is unpleasant. The perception is, they are against me. The thought is, I must defend myself. The craving is for retaliation. And the action is harsh speech. The result is conflict. But with mindfulness, the chain shifts. Someone criticizes you. The feeling is still unpleasant, but awareness notices. This is just unpleasantness. The thought becomes, I do not need to take this personally. The craving for retaliation weakens, and the action might be silence or a calm reply. The result is peace instead of conflict. The same event unfolded, but the outcome changed because the chain was altered at the level of thought. This is why the practice of watching thoughts is not abstract philosophy. It is the most practical tool you possess. Every moment, you are planting seeds of your future. Every moment, you are strengthening one chain and weakening another. The choice is constant, and awareness is the key. Zen teachers often illustrate this with the image of an archer. If the archer is careless at the moment of aiming, even by a fraction, the arrow will miss the target entirely once it flies. Thoughts are the aim. Actions are the arrow. If the thought is careless, the action will miss its mark, and the result will wander far from your true intention. But if the thought is steady, the arrow flies straight, and the result aligns with your vision. In your own life, you can see this truth in subtle ways. When you wake with gratitude, the day feels lighter, even when difficulties appear. When you wake with resentment, the day feels heavy, even when nothing major happens. The outer events are not the cause. The inner thought at the start shaped the chain of emotions, actions, and results that followed. This is also why repetition matters. A single thought may not seem powerful, but repeated thoughts form grooves, and grooves shape habits. If you repeatedly think, I am not capable, you create a habit of hesitation. If you repeatedly think, I can learn, you create a habit of resilience. The Buddha compared this to water carving stone. A single drop does little, but repeated drops over years carve valleys. Thoughts are those drops, repeated daily. They shape the very landscape of your destiny. So how do you shift this chain in your favor? Begin with awareness. Notice the thought as it arises. When you feel sadness, trace it back. What thought began it? When you feel joy, trace it back as well. What thought gave birth to it? This tracing is like following a thread through a tangled knot. When you find the beginning, you understand how the knot was tied, and you also learn how to untie it. Next, practice replacement. When a thought of defeat arises, gently replace it with one of possibility. When fear says, I cannot, you answer, I will try. When doubt whispers, I am not enough, you respond, I am growing. These replacements may feel small, but they shift the chain. A different thought creates a different feeling, and that leads to a different action. Slowly, the pattern of your life changes. Also, remember that thoughts are not isolated. They travel in groups, like families. Fear attracts doubt. Doubt attracts hesitation. Hesitation attracts regret. But courage attracts trust. Trust attracts action. Action attracts strength. When you invite one member of a family of thoughts, the others soon arrive. This is why the Buddha urged the cultivation of wholesome thoughts. A single moment of compassion can invite patience, forgiveness, and love to follow. There is a story of a monk who was asked how he managed to remain so peaceful. He replied, "Each morning I plant 3 seeds, one of gratitude, one of patience, and one of compassion. By the end of the day, they have grown into a forest that shelters me." His peace was not accidental. It was the fruit of a chain he chose, deliberately, every day. Tonight, as you reflect, consider the chains in your own life. Which thoughts lead to emotions that nourish you? Which thoughts lead to actions that harm you? Can you see the patterns that repeat? Can you trace the results you live today back to the thoughts you repeated yesterday? This reflection is not for blame, but for clarity. For once you see the chain, you realize you are not bound by it. You can change the link at the level of thought, and the whole outcome shifts. The chain is real, but it is not prison. It is simply cause and effect, unfolding in every moment. With awareness, you hold the power to choose which chain to strengthen. Plant thoughts of kindness, and kindness will follow. Plant thoughts of fear, and fear will follow. The choice is constant, the law unbreakable. And when you see this clearly, you understand that mastery of thought is mastery of destiny itself. Every human being carries an image of the future. Sometimes it is bright, filled with hope and possibility. Other times it is shadowed, weighed down by doubt and fear. This image is not just imagination, it is a map that guides the mind and body toward action. The Buddha taught that the mind precedes all things. Whatever vision you hold most deeply becomes the direction in which your life moves. In modern language, we call this visualization. In Buddhist practice, it is the cultivation of citta bhavana, the deliberate shaping of the mind toward wholesome states and skillful action. To understand this, to think of a craftsman building a house. Before he lays the first stone, he holds a blueprint. He sees the design clearly in his mind. Without that vision, the construction is chaotic, the walls uneven, the roof unstable. But with a clear blueprint, each action aligns with purpose. Visualization is that blueprint for your life. When you see yourself patient, compassionate, steady, you are drawing the map of who you are becoming. This is not wishful thinking. It is training. Neuroscientists today confirm what Buddhist masters have long known, that the brain responds to imagined experiences as if they were real. A monk who visualizes compassion strengthens the same pathways in the mind, as when he actually practices it. An athlete who visualizes running with strength trains the body even before stepping onto the track. The mind rehearses, and the body follows. But the Buddha warned against the trap of fantasy. To imagine endlessly without action is to build castles in the clouds. Beautiful, perhaps, but fragile and useless. Visualization must be paired with discipline. It is not an escape from the present, but a preparation for it. When you visualize patience, you are preparing to practice patience in the next conflict. When you visualize compassion, you are preparing to respond kindly in the next encounter. The vision is the seed, but action is the soil in which it must be planted. Without action, the seed cannot grow. Consider how this works in daily life. A person who constantly visualizes failure, who replays mistakes, anticipates rejection, imagines defeat, creates a mental rehearsal for collapse. When challenges arrive, the body and mind respond according to the rehearsal: hesitation, fear, retreat. Another person who visualizes resilience, who imagines themselves standing steady, breathing deeply, responding wisely, creates a rehearsal for strength. When challenges arrive, the body remembers the script: calm breath, steady response, clarity of action. The outer situation may be the same, but the inner preparation changes everything. Zen stories often illustrate this through simple acts. A master once asked a student, "How do you walk across a river on a narrow plank?" The student replied, "I walk carefully, watching each step." The master shook his head. "You fall because you see yourself falling. Instead, see yourself already across." The teaching is not about ignoring effort, but about holding the vision of success, so the body aligns with it naturally. Visualization is seeing yourself already on the other shore, and then taking each step with confidence. In Buddhist meditation, there is a practice called Buddhanusmriti, recollection of the Buddha. Practitioners visualize the Buddha seated before them, radiant, calm, compassionate. They hold this image in the mind until their own heart begins to mirror it. The vision becomes a model, a guide, a reminder of what is possible. In the same way, you can visualize the qualities you wish to embody: patience, courage, joy, not as distant ideals, but as seeds already within you, waiting to be watered. Yet visualization alone is not enough. It must be nourished daily, just as a seed must be watered consistently. If you visualize peace in the morning but feed on anger all day, the seed withers. If you visualize compassion but surround yourself with voices of cruelty, the seed struggles. You must protect the vision. Feed it with words, actions, and environments that support it. This is why daily rituals matter: reading wisdom, practicing meditation, surrounding yourself with people who reflect your highest intentions. Each of these is sunlight and water for the vision you carry. There is another important aspect: visualization should not be limited to personal success. If it is rooted only in self-centered desire, it may bring temporary satisfaction but not lasting peace. True Buddhist practice expands the vision to include all beings, When you visualize happiness, include others. When you visualize freedom, extend it outward. Imagine a world where compassion flows easily, where anger dissolves quickly, where people meet each other with understanding. Let this vision guide your actions, so your life contributes not only to your own growth but to the healing of the world. Think of a tree. It grows not only for itself but for the shade it offers, the fruit it bears, the shelter it provides. Your vision, too, is not only for your own comfort but for the nourishment of others. When you visualize patience, you are not only calming yourself, you are creating space for others to feel safe in your presence. When you visualize compassion, you are not only softening your heart, you are opening a path for others to feel seen and valued. In this way, visualization becomes a practice of service. And yet, remember also to be patient. A vision does not manifest instantly. Just as a seed takes time to sprout, to push through the soil, to grow into a tree, your vision takes time to become reality. There will be days when it feels distant, when the old patterns seem stronger. But if you return to the vision consistently, if you rehearse it daily and support it with action, it will grow, slowly, quietly, inevitably. The image you hold in the mind becomes the life you hold in your hands. Tonight, as you rest, try this. Close your eyes and picture yourself 1 year from now. See yourself not in terms of possessions or status, but in qualities of being. Imagine yourself calm, steady, compassionate. Imagine yourself meeting challenges with clarity, speaking with kindness, walking with confidence. Hold this image gently, not as fantasy, but as a seed. Whisper inwardly, "This is who I am becoming." Let the image settle in the soil of the heart. And tomorrow, when the first challenge arises, remember the seed, and let your action water it. Visualization is not escape. It is alignment. It is not wishful thinking, but disciplined preparation. It is the art of seeing yourself on the other shore and then walking step by step until you arrive. And when guided by compassion and wisdom, it is not only your life that changes, but the lives of all who walk beside you. Discipline is the thread that ties every teaching together. Without it, awareness remains fleeting, intention remains unfocused, and visualization drifts into daydream. Discipline does not mean harsh control or rigid self-punishment. In the Buddhist path, discipline is gentle but steady, like the rhythm of breath that continues without fail. It is the quiet decision, made again and again, to return to the practice, to align the mind with clarity, and to choose what is wholesome, even when temptation whispers otherwise. The Buddha described discipline as a form of protection, not restriction. Just as a fence protects a young sapling from being trampled before it grows strong, discipline protects the mind while it is still tender, still learning to stand firm. Without the fence, the sapling may be crushed before it matures. With the fence, it grows tall, and one day, it no longer needs protection. In the same way, discipline guards the mind, until wisdom and compassion are strong enough to guide every action naturally. You can see the need for discipline in ordinary life. When you train the body, you cannot exercise only once and expect lasting strength. Muscles grow through repeated practice, through resistance met consistently over time. The mind is no different. If you wish to cultivate patience, you must practice it each day, in small ways, until it becomes second nature. If you wish to develop compassion, you must choose it again and again. Even when anger feels easier, discipline is the training that turns ideals into habits and habits into character. Zen teachers often remind their students, enlightenment is an accident, but practice makes you accident-prone. Discipline is what makes awakening more likely. It does not guarantee instant transformation, but it prepares the ground. When the storm of life arrives, discipline ensures that your roots are deep enough not to be swept away. The challenge is that the mind resists discipline. It prefers comfort, distraction, the ease of old grooves. Sitting in meditation can feel uncomfortable. Choosing kindness instead of retaliation can feel unnatural. Pausing to breathe can feel unnecessary when emotion is high. Yet discipline is precisely the decision to remain steady in those moments, to hold the practice even when it feels inconvenient. Each time you return, you strengthen the groove of resilience. Each time you persist, the resistance weakens a little more. The Buddha taught the importance of sila, ethical discipline, as the foundation of the path. It includes refraining from harm, from false speech, from greed, from heedlessness. These are not rules imposed from outside, but guidelines that keep the mind clear. When you lie, the mind must carry the weight of deception. When you harm, the mind carries guilt and regret. But when you live ethically, the mind remains lighter, more at ease, ready to enter deeper states of meditation. Discipline in conduct creates discipline in thought, and the two support each other. Think also of how discipline is built on small, steady acts. You do not need to conquer your mind in one day. You only need to begin with what is possible. Perhaps today you choose to meditate for 5 minutes. Tomorrow, you extend it to 10. Perhaps today you notice anger and pause once before speaking. Tomorrow, you pause twice. These small victories accumulate over weeks, months, years. They reshape your mind as surely as drops of water shape stone. Discipline is not a single act, but a lifelong rhythm. There is a story of a monk who was asked how he achieved such calm. He replied, "Each day, I tie myself to the post of practice, and I do not untie myself until the day is done." The post was not a burden, but an anchor. It kept him steady when the winds of thought tried to carry him away. In the same way, your discipline is the anchor that holds you steady in the flow of life. But remember, discipline must be balanced with compassion. If you treat yourself harshly, demanding perfection, discipline becomes another form of suffering. True discipline is firm but kind. When you falter, you do not punish yourself, you return gently. When you wander, you do not despair. You step back onto the path. In this way, Discipline becomes an act of love, a way of caring for your own mind as you would care for a dear friend. Consider how this discipline transforms your relationship with time. Without it, days slip away in distraction, and years are filled with regret. With discipline, even small moments become meaningful. 5 minutes of mindful breathing can shift the course of an entire day. A single act of kindness chosen deliberately can alter the atmosphere of a relationship. Discipline gathers these small acts and weaves them into a tapestry of purpose. Tonight, reflect on where discipline is needed most in your life. Is it in guarding the senses, so that your mind is not poisoned by negativity? Is it in returning to meditation each day, even when restless? Is it in speaking truthfully, even when silence would be easier? Whatever it is, choose one area and commit to steady practice. Let it be your anchor, your fence, your rhythm. With time, the discipline will no longer feel like effort, it will feel like home. Discipline in thought is discipline in destiny. Each time you choose awareness over distraction, you strengthen the path. Each time you choose compassion over anger, you steady the heart. Each time you return to practice, no matter how many times you have wandered, you affirm your freedom. In this way, discipline becomes not a burden, but a blessing. The quiet strength that guides you toward peace. Hold this truth gently. As you close your eyes tonight, discipline is not the enemy of freedom. It is the doorway to it. For the undisciplined mind is a prisoner of impulse. But the disciplined mind is free to choose wisely. And with each act of discipline, you are shaping not only your thoughts but your life, your destiny, your very being. When people look for change, they often look outward. They think, if only my circumstances improve, if only others treat me differently, if only the world becomes kinder, then I will finally be at peace. But the Buddha turned this view inside out. He taught that the world you see is already a reflection of the world you carry within. Outer conditions follow inner consciousness. To wait for life to improve before changing your mind is like waiting for the mirror to smile before you smile into it. Think about how often this pattern plays out. A person feels unworthy inside, and so even when love is offered, they cannot accept it. They doubt the sincerity of kindness, suspect hidden motives, and thus their relationships grow strained. Another person feels grateful inside, and so even small gestures become sources of joy. They find beauty in ordinary things, and their life appears rich, even without wealth. The difference is not in the outer conditions, but in the inner state of mind. This is why the Buddha said, "We are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts. With our thoughts, we make the world." The world you live in right now is not random. It is shaped by the beliefs and images you hold most often. If you constantly think, life is unfair, you will notice injustice everywhere. If you cultivate the thought, life is a teacher, you will discover lessons in every challenge. Consciousness precedes condition. Zen masters sometimes use the image of colored glasses. Put on glasses tinted blue, and the world appears blue. put on glasses tinted red, and the world appears red. The outer world has not changed. The filter of perception has. In the same way, your dominant thoughts act as lenses. Fear is one color, gratitude another, compassion another still. The way you interpret events depends on the lens you wear, and though you may not control what appears before you, you can choose which lens to polish and put on. Consider a farmer sowing seeds. The soil accepts whatever is planted, whether weeds or wheat, thorns or flowers. It does not discriminate. It simply returns what was sown. The mind is the same. Whatever thoughts you plant repeatedly, the soil of consciousness will grow. Plant fear, and life becomes tangled. Plant compassion, and life blossoms. Outer results follow inner cultivation. To complain about the harvest without changing the seeds is to misunderstand the law of cause and effect. Rumi expressed this truth when he said, "Work on your inner self, your private self. The visible world is only the curtain. Inside is where the real play takes place. If your inner self is restless, the world feels restless. If your inner self is peaceful, the world feels supportive." Outer life bends to the direction of your inner script. This is why the path always begins within. And yet, the mind resists this teaching. It wants to believe the cause lies outside, because then the blame lies outside. It is easier to say, "I am unhappy because of others," than to admit, "I have fed unhappiness in my own mind." But the moment you take responsibility, you reclaim power. If outer life reflects inner thought, then changing thought changes life. This is not instant magic, but gradual alignment. Each new thought, each act of awareness, reshapes the reflection until the outer world cannot help but follow. Think of water poured into a crooked container. The water takes the shape of the vessel, no matter how bent it is. The mind is that container, and your experience of life is the water. If the container is shaped by fear, life seems fearful. If shaped by kindness, life flows kindly. To change the water, you must reshape the vessel. To change life, you must reshape consciousness. In meditation, this reshaping happens naturally. When you sit, watch the breath, and notice thoughts without clinging. The old grooves begin to soften. Fear loses its grip. Anger loosens. Compassion rises like clear water, filling a new vessel. Slowly, the inner world transforms. And as it transforms, so does the way you meet the outer world. Challenges remain, but they no longer crush you. Loss still comes, but it is held within the vastness of acceptance. Joy still appears, but it is savored without clinging. This is the reflection of an inner life aligned with wisdom. There is a story of two monks walking through a storm. One complained bitterly, "Why is the sky so cruel? Why must we suffer this cold and wet?" The other simply smiled and said, "The sky does not punish. The rain is just rain." One monk's world was filled with cruelty, the other's with acceptance. The outer storm was the same. The inner lens determined the experience. This teaching is not meant to deny real suffering, hunger, illness, injustice. These are real conditions. But even in suffering, the inner state matters. A person who suffers with anger suffers twice, once from the pain itself, and again from the bitterness. A person who suffers with compassion still feels pain, but it is softened by acceptance. The condition remains, but consciousness changes the quality of the experience. This is what it means when we say, consciousness precedes condition. Tonight, as you listen, reflect on the world you see around you. Is it filled with barriers or with opportunities? Is it filled with enemies or with teachers? Is it heavy with lack or alive with blessings? Then ask, what thoughts have you repeated to create this vision? What lenses are you wearing? If you wish the reflection to change, begin with the lens. Begin with the thought, the world is not fixed. It bends to the shape of your inner consciousness, and your consciousness is not fixed either. It bends to the thoughts you choose to plant, to the intentions you repeat, to the discipline you practice. In this way, your life is not a prison of chance but a garden of choice. Change the inner seeds, and the harvest of the outer world will follow. So, do not wait for the mirror to smile. Smile first. Do not wait for life to be kind. Practice kindness first. Do not wait for conditions to improve. Improve your consciousness, and conditions will eventually align. This is not theory, it is law. As certain as cause and effect, as steady as shadow following form. There is a law of life that cannot be escaped. What you hold in the silence of your mind becomes the world you inhabit. Every private thought, every belief repeated in solitude, every image entertained. When no one else is watching, they are the architects of your reality. The Buddha described it simply, as a man thinks, so he becomes. Modern teachers may call it the power of intention, or the law of attraction, but the root is the same timeless truth. Inner vision, précise outer form. Think of your mind as a theater. The stage is empty until you place an image upon it. Perhaps you fill it with fears of failure, rehearsing scenes of rejection and loss. The body responds, as if the play is real. Shoulders tighten, breath shortens, heart grows heavy. Or perhaps you fill it with images of courage, rehearsing patience, trust, and compassion. The body relaxes, the breath deepens, the heart grows steady. The play within becomes the life without. Even when nothing outward has changed, your inner rehearsal has already shifted your experience of the world. This is why mindfulness is not only about watching thoughts, but about deliberately choosing which ones to nurture. You cannot stop every thought from arising. The stage will not remain empty for long, but you can decide which performance to allow to continue, which actors to invite back, and which to dismiss politely. The Buddha said the mind is like a garden. You cannot stop every seed from blowing in, but you can decide which ones to water. Water fear, and it grows wild. Water compassion, and it blossoms. Consider also how thoughts, once repeated, shape belief, and belief directs action. A person who constantly repeats, "I am unworthy," begins to act in ways that confirm it. They decline opportunities, silence their own voice, avoid love, and then point to the emptiness around them as proof. But the proof was planted first in the soil of thought. Another person who repeats, "I am growing stronger," begins to act with courage. They try new things, speak with clarity, step forward, even when uncertain. Eventually, their life reflects this strength. Again, the seed was thought. The fruit was circumstance. Zen teachings often remind us that the mind is like a mirror. It reflects what is placed before it. If you place an image of fear, the reflection you see is fearful. If you place an image of peace, the reflection is peaceful. But the mirror does not choose the image. You do. This is the quiet responsibility and the quiet freedom of being human. There is a story of a disciple who asked his master why life seemed so harsh. The master handed him a cup of water and a handful of salt. "Put the salt in the cup and drink," he said. The disciple tasted and grimaced. "It is bitter." Then the master took him to a wide lake and poured in another handful of salt. "Now, drink." The disciple sipped, and the water was fresh. The bitterness is the same. The master explained, but the container changes everything. If your mind is small, every thought of fear or anger makes life bitter. If your mind is fast, the same thought dissolves without harm. Expanding the mind with compassion, patience, and wisdom changes the effect of whatever arises. This expansion happens through daily choice. When you choose to focus on gratitude instead of complaint, the mind grows larger. When you choose to forgive instead of replaying grievances, the mind grows more spacious. When you choose to sit in stillness instead of drowning in distraction, the mind becomes vast. In that vastness, painful thoughts dissolve more easily, and nourishing thoughts flow freely. But you must also remember that thoughts do not remain private forever. They shape your words, and words shape your relationships. They guide your actions, and actions shape your destiny. A person who quietly cultivates resentment eventually speaks with bitterness. A person who cultivates kindness eventually radiates warmth in every gesture. Others may not see the rehearsal of thoughts, but they feel its performance in your presence. This is why the Buddha urged, guard your mind, for what you think, you become. Imagine now your own inner theater. What play has been performed most often in recent days? Is it a tragedy of regret, a comedy of distraction, or perhaps a quiet drama of courage unfolding scene by scene? Remember, you are not only the audience, you are the director. You can rewrite the script. You can choose new actors. You can shift the performance toward compassion, gratitude, and peace. Visualization becomes powerful here. Each morning, before the rush of the day, take a moment to set the stage. Picture yourself meeting challenges with calm, speaking words of kindness, walking with steady breath. Do not rush the image. Let it settle until it feels real. Then step into the day as if the play has already begun. The world will still bring surprises, but your rehearsal has prepared you. You will respond not as a victim of habit, but as the author of your own role. It is also helpful to remember that not all thoughts are meant to be believed. Some arise simply because of old grooves, past wounds, or fleeting moods. When such thoughts appear, I will fail. I am alone. Nothing will change. Treat them as clouds drifting across the sky. Do not argue with them. Do not cling to them. Simply say, "This is just a thought," and return to your breath. The sky does not belong to the cloud, and you do not belong to the thought. There is another Zen saying, "You cannot stop the birds from flying overhead, but you can stop them from building a nest in your hair." Thoughts will come endlessly. You cannot prevent their arrival, but you can prevent them from nesting, from taking root, from becoming the dominant story of your life. By choosing which thoughts to entertain, you choose the shape of your future. Tonight, reflect gently. What seeds have you been watering? Are they seeds of fear, or seeds of courage, seeds of resentment, or seeds of compassion? Which harvest do you wish to gather in the coming months, the coming years? The choice begins now, in the silence of your own mind. Your inner world is the blueprint of your outer world. The stage you set within becomes the play you act without. Guard it wisely, choose carefully, and remember, even the smallest shift of thought can ripple outward into great transformation. Plant love, and love returns. Plant peace, and peace surrounds you. Plant freedom, and you will walk lightly, unchained by fear. Awareness is the first turning of the key. Without it, the door to transformation remains locked, no matter how hard you push. Many people spend their lives on autopilot, repeating the same patterns of thought and behavior without ever stopping to see them clearly. They wonder why life feels heavy, why opportunities slip away, why the same mistakes return again and again. The truth is not that they lack power, but that they lack awareness. Until you notice the chain of your own mind, you cannot guide it. The Buddha described awareness as a lamp in a dark room. Without the lamp, you stumble, tripping over obstacles you cannot see. You blame the room, the furniture, the floor. But when the lamp is lit, you see everything as it is. The obstacles remain, but now you know where they are. You can walk carefully. You can move them aside. You can choose your path. Awareness does not erase difficulty, but it reveals truth. And truth is the ground of freedom. Think about your own thoughts during a single day. How many of them do you actually notice? A flash of irritation in traffic, a sudden fear before a task, a quiet memory of regret. Often, these pass like background music, unnoticed but powerful, setting the mood of your life without your consent. To live without awareness is to let random thoughts drive the car while you sit in the back seat, wondering why you keep ending up in the same place. But with awareness, you take the wheel. You may not control every road, but you decide how to travel. Zen practice calls this shikantaza, just sitting. When you sit and do nothing but observe, you begin to see how restless the mind really is. Thoughts leap, scatter, return, fade, Some are loud, demanding attention. Others are quiet, like whispers in the background. The practice is not to silence them, but to notice. By noticing, you realize that you are not the thoughts themselves. You are the one who sees them. This simple recognition creates space. In that space lies choice. There is a story of a warrior who entered battle blindfolded. He swung his sword wildly, but without sight, he struck nothing. The enemy defeated him easily. Another warrior entered with eyes open. Even though the enemy was strong, he could see clearly, and with clarity he fought wisely. The blindfold is unawareness. With it, you are helpless. Remove it. And even if life remains challenging, you now stand a chance. Awareness is the act of removing the blindfold. Yet awareness is not always comfortable. It shines light, not only on your strengths, but also on your excuses, your habits, your hidden fears. You may see how much time you waste, how often you replay anger, how deeply you cling to old wounds. At first, this can feel painful, but remember, pain is the signal that growth is near. To see the truth is not punishment, it is liberation. Once you see clearly, you can no longer remain chained to patterns that no longer serve you. The Buddha explained this through the Four Noble Truths. The first truth is to see suffering, not to deny it, not to hide from it, but to look directly and say, "Here it is." This seeing is awareness. Only then can the second truth emerge, understanding the cause. Only then can the third truth appear, realizing the possibility of ending it. And only then can the fourth truth be lived, walking the path of transformation. Awareness is the beginning of the path, without which no step can follow. Daily life offers countless chances to practice. When irritation arises, instead of reacting instantly, pause. Notice the thought, "This is anger." Notice the body, the tightening jaw, the quickened breath. In this pause, you reclaim freedom. You do not have to lash out. You can choose silence, or a softer word, or simply breathing through the heat. Awareness interrupts the chain of automatic reaction and opens the door to new response. When joy arises, awareness deepens it. Instead of rushing past, you pause and say, "This is joy." You feel it fully, without clinging, without fear of losing it. Awareness allows you to savor the moment, to taste its fullness, and then to let it go gracefully when it passes. In this way, awareness enriches both joy and sorrow. It reveals them as teachers, not as traps. It is important to remember that awareness is not judgment. To be aware does not mean to scold yourself for every mistake or to praise yourself for every success. It means to see with clarity and neutrality. The way a mirror reflects without preference, awareness reflects the mind. It says, "Here is anger. Here is fear. Here is compassion." Nothing more, nothing less. From this clear reflection, wisdom arises naturally. Modern psychology echoes this in the practice of mindfulness-based therapy. When people learn to observe their thoughts instead of identifying with them, anxiety decreases, depression lightens, Resilience grows. This is not new wisdom. It is the same lamp the Buddha held, the same awareness Zen masters have pointed to for centuries. The only difference is the language. Awareness heals because it returns you to the present, to the reality of this moment, where life is always happening. Tonight, you might try a simple exercise. As thoughts arise, do not chase them or push them away. Simply say, "This is a thought." When an emotion rises, say, "This is an emotion." Notice how naming creates distance. You are no longer inside the storm, you are watching it. And when you watch, the storm loses some of its power. This is awareness in action. With practice, awareness becomes your constant companion. Walking, you are aware of walking. Eating, you are aware of eating. Breathing, you are aware of breathing. Thoughts may come and go, but awareness remains steady, like the sky above shifting weather. And as awareness grows, your life transforms. Old patterns lose their grip. New possibilities open. The mind, once a prison of habit, becomes a field of freedom. Remember this truth. Awareness is the root of all transformation. Without it, you wander in the dark. With it, you see clearly. And when you see clearly, you can choose wisely. That choice, repeated again and again, is the very path of liberation. Discipline is the rhythm that carries the teachings of the mind from fleeting ideas into living practice. Without it, awareness flickers like a candle in the wind, easily extinguished by habit or distraction. With it, awareness becomes steady, enduring through the changing conditions of life. The Buddha placed great emphasis on daily discipline, not as a burden, but as the foundation of freedom. Ashvao, each small act of mindfulness, each gentle return to practice, is like laying one more stone in the path toward liberation. Daily discipline does not need to be heroic. It does not require hours of austere silence or grand renunciations. What it requires is constancy. To rise each morning with a clear intention, to pause each evening with reflection, to weave small moments of awareness into the fabric of an ordinary day, like beads on a mala. Each repetition may seem small, but strung together they create a pattern strong enough to guide the heart. Morning is the time to set the tone. Before the noise of the world fills the mind, the space is open, fertile, ready for planting. If you reach for your worries first, the day bends toward anxiety. If you reach for gratitude, the day leans toward peace. This is why monks recite vows at dawn. They declare, "Today, I will not harm. Today, I will cultivate compassion. Today, I will walk with mindfulness." These vows are not rigid laws, but gentle reminders, signposts, guiding the heart when distraction tempts. You can practice the same in your own life. When you open your eyes in the morning, take 3 breaths before rising. With the first breath, feel gratitude for waking to another day. With the second, set one small intention to speak kindly, to walk slowly, to pause before reacting. With the third, offer compassion outward. silently wishing well for all beings who also rise this day. Such a practice takes less than a minute, yet it plants seeds that will blossom throughout the hours to come. Evening is the time to gather the day, to review its lessons with honesty and care. Before sleep, reflect gently. What thoughts did I entertain? What words did I speak? Where did I wander? And where did I return? Do not scold yourself for mistakes, simply notice. Just as a gardener walks through the field, observing which plants need water and which weeds need removal, so too, you tend the garden of your mind. If anger was planted, acknowledge it. If kindness grew, rejoice in it. This quiet reflection ensures that tomorrow you begin not blindly but with clarity. The Buddha encouraged this rhythm of daily contemplation, for he knew how easily the mind drifts without anchors. Morning vows set the direction. Evening reflections confirm the path. Together they form a cycle, a breath of the day itself, inhaling intention at dawn, exhaling awareness at dusk. With each cycle, the mind grows steadier, the habits of awareness deepen, and the seeds of liberation are nourished. Discipline is not only in formal practice but also in small vows carried throughout the day. A vow to pause before speaking harshly. A vow to walk with awareness of each step. A vow to place the spoon down between bites. Tasting food with full attention. These small acts are not trivial. They are the scaffolding that holds the temple of mindfulness upright. Without them, the structure wobbles. With them, it stands firm. Even when storms arise, there is a story of a lay disciple who asked the Buddha, "How can I practice when my life is filled with work and family?" The Buddha replied, "Each morning, make one vow. Each evening, reflect on it. In this way, you carry the Dharma into every task." The man followed this advice, vowing sometimes to speak truth, sometimes to show patience, sometimes to offer generosity. Over the years, his small vows transformed his life. Others said, "You are a great practitioner." He smiled and replied, "I only kept one vow each day." The mind loves to chase grand transformations, to imagine enlightenment as a sudden lightning strike. But the truth is gentler. Transformation often arrives through small, consistent acts. A vow whispered at dawn, a reflection whispered at dusk. Each repetition shapes the grooves of the mind, until awareness becomes as natural as breathing. Daily discipline is not a cage, but a compass. It does not confine you. It frees you from drifting aimlessly. Each vow you make is a star in the night sky, guiding you when the path grows dark. Each reflection you take is a lantern, showing where you have walked and where you might walk more wisely tomorrow. Together, they keep you aligned, steady, resilient. Tonight, reflect on the rhythm of your own days. Do you begin them with intention or with worry? Do you end them with reflection or with distraction? What small vow could you whisper tomorrow morning that might shape the entire day? What gentle reflection could you hold tomorrow night that might prepare the soil for peace? Remember, discipline is not about forcing perfection. It is about returning again and again, with patience and kindness. Like a bell, struck each morning and evening, the sound fades but returns, marking time with steadiness. Your practice can be the same, repeated, simple, faithful, and over time, this rhythm will carry you, like a current, toward the shore of liberation. Patience is the hidden companion of discipline. Discipline sets the rhythm of practice, but patience sustains it when results seem distant. Without patience, discipline quickly turns to frustration. With patience, discipline becomes a steady current, flowing quietly beneath the surface until one day it breaks forth in transformation. The Buddha often used the metaphor of nature to explain this truth. A tree does not grow overnight. The bamboo does not break through the soil the day after it is planted. Growth is invisible for long stretches. Yet, beneath the earth, roots are spreading, weaving a foundation strong enough to support what will one day rise. The bamboo forest offers a lesson many forget. When the seed is first planted, nothing appears for years. Farmers water the soil faithfully, tend it carefully, yet see no shoots breaking the surface. To the impatient, it seems as though nothing is happening, as though the effort is wasted. But underground, the bamboo is preparing. Its roots are weaving deeply, creating strength, anchoring themselves in silence. And then, when the time is right, the shoots break through, and in a single season they can rise taller than most trees. Patience made the sudden growth possible. Without those years unseen, the forest would collapse. Your practice of mindfulness, your training of thought, your cultivation of compassion is like this. You may meditate for weeks and feel no change. You may speak affirmations and still hear the voice of doubt. You may water the seeds of patience, yet still feel anger arise. But beneath the surface, change is happening. The roots are forming. New pathways in the mind are being carved. And one day, almost without realizing, you will find that your response to anger has softened. Your heart toward others has widened. Your clarity in the face of fear has deepened. The Buddha said, "Drop by drop, the water jar is filled." Likewise, the wise person, gathering little by little, fills themselves with good. Patience is the wisdom of drops. You do not demand that the jar be filled in one pour. You allow each drop to fall, trusting that over time the vessel will brim. In the same way, each breath of awareness, each kind word, each moment of restraint is a drop. Alone, it may seem small. Together, they become the flood of transformation. Consider how many years it took for old habits to form. Fear repeated itself until it became natural. Doubt whispered so often it carved grooves in the mind. Anger returned so regularly it built a home in the heart. These did not form in a day. Why then expect them to dissolve in a day? Patience means honoring the time it takes to unweave old patterns and replace them with new ones. Just as a scar does not vanish instantly, neither do mental wounds. But with patience, healing happens, slowly but surely. Zen masters emphasize patience by directing students to simple, Repetitive tasks. Sweeping the same floor each day. Carrying water from the same well. Cooking the same rice. These are not meant to bore, but to teach. You learn that repetition itself is sacred. That growth does not come from constant novelty, but from constancy. That patience is not waiting idly, but walking faithfully, step by step. Even when you cannot yet see the destination, there is a story of a disciple who asked his teacher, "How long will it take me to awaken if I practice diligently?" The teacher replied, 10 years. The disciple said, "What if I practice twice as hard?" The teacher smiled. Then 20 years. Confused, the disciple asked why. The teacher explained, "Because impatience is another form of grasping, and grasping holds you back. Patience is not about delaying awakening, it is part of awakening itself. When you plant a seed, you do not stand over it, demanding it sprout. You water it, tend it, and trust the process. Impatience digs into the soil, disturbing the roots, slowing the growth. Patience allows life to unfold at its natural pace. In your practice, when you feel restless, remember the bamboo. When you feel nothing is happening, remember the drops filling the jar. When you feel weak, remember that roots often grow deepest before the shoot breaks through. Patience also means being gentle with yourself. You will stumble. You will forget. You will fall back into old habits. This is not failure, it is part of the path. Just as a child, learning to walk falls many times, so too does the practitioner fall in learning mindfulness. Each fall is a chance to rise again. Patience reminds you not to measure yourself by perfection, but by persistence. As long as you return, you are walking the path. And patience is not only for yourself, but for others. People around you are also growing, also struggling with their own habits and wounds. Just as you need time, so do they. To be patient with another is to recognize the bamboo beneath their soil, roots growing unseen. When you offer patience, you water their growth as much as your own. Tonight, reflect on the seeds you have planted. Which ones have you watered faithfully, even without seeing results? Can you trust that beneath the surface, roots are forming? Can you release the demand for immediate change and instead embrace the slow, steady rhythm of patience? Remember, transformation is like the bamboo, long years of silence, then sudden growth, invisible préparation, then visible change. Trust the roots, trust the drops, trust the unseen work of patience. For when the time comes, the forest of your mind will rise tall, steady, and unshakable. Discipline is often misunderstood. Many imagine it as chains, as rigid rules that restrict freedom, as a heavy burden carried with gritted teeth. But in truth, real discipline is the opposite. It is not confinement, but liberation. It is not chains, but wings. It is not punishment, but protection. In Buddhism, discipline is known as sila, one of the three foundations of the path, alongside wisdom and concentration. Far from restricting life, Sila sets the conditions that allow the heart and mind to move freely, unburdened by compulsion. Freedom is not doing whatever you want, whenever you want. That is not freedom, but slavery to desire. To eat every craving, to speak every thought, to follow every impulse is to be dragged endlessly by the restless tide of the mind. Real freedom is to choose, to have the clarity and strength to say yes to what nourishes and no to what harms. Without discipline, you cannot choose. You are ruled by habit, by fear, by greed, by distraction. With discipline, you are sovereign of your own mind. Consider the person who cannot stop scrolling through distractions late at night. They may believe they are free, indulging as they wish. Yet when morning arrives heavy and tired, when the mind feels scattered, when regret stirs, are they truly free, or are they enslaved by restlessness? Contrast this with the person who sets a clear boundary, who lays the phone aside, who rests mindfully. They may feel restraint in the moment, but in the morning they rise lighter, clearer, stronger. This is the freedom that discipline brings. The Buddha taught that the mind without discipline is like a wild horse, beautiful but dangerous. It runs wherever it pleases, trampling crops, injuring itself, refusing to be guided. The disciplined mind is like a trained horse, equally beautiful, yet capable of carrying the rider with grace to the destination. Training does not destroy the horse's spirit, it channels it. Discipline does not crush the mind's energy, it directs it. Zen monks embody this truth in their daily routines. Their days are marked by bells, meals at set times, chanting, meditation, work, and rest. To an outsider, this life may seem rigid, devoid of freedom, yet those who live it speak of great peace. Why? Because discipline removes the constant noise of choice. It quiets the endless chatter of, "What should I do now?" and instead creates space for presence. With structure, the mind can rest. With discipline, awareness deepens. You can bring this same freedom into your own life. Set small disciplines that guard your clarity. Perhaps it is a vow to meditate each morning, even for 5 minutes. Perhaps it is a decision to eat without screens, tasting each bite. Perhaps it is a rule not to speak when anger is hot, waiting until the heart cools. Discipline may seem small, but together they free you from compulsion. They give you space to act with wisdom instead of impulse. Discipline also liberates you from regret. How many times have you spoken words you later wished to recall? How many times have you acted from impulse and then carried the burden afterward? Each act of restraint saves you from this weight. Each moment of discipline is a gift to your future self. When you pause, when you choose wisely, when you align with your values, you create a life lighter, freer, less entangled. There is a story of a monk who walked past a field of ripe fruit each day. The fruit was tempting, bright and fragrant. One day, a traveler asked, "Why do you never take one?" Surely no one would know. The monk smiled and said, "Because I would know." Discipline is the freedom of not carrying secret guilt, of not being bound by shame. It is the freedom of living transparently, so that your inner world and outer actions are in harmony. In Buddhist teaching, true freedom is nirvana, the extinguishing of craving, the end of being driven by grasping and aversion. Discipline is the pathway to this freedom. Each time you refrain from feeding anger, craving, or distraction, you loosen their grip. Each act of discipline is a small taste of nirvana. You are no longer pushed and pulled by the world. You move with clarity, calm, and choice. Freedom through discipline also extends to relationships. A person without restraint may hurt others with careless words, damage trust with impulsive actions, or create harm without realizing. Discipline ensures that your presence is safe for others. When people know that you are mindful with your words, that you restrain your anger, that you act with consistency, they feel peace in your company. Discipline is not only freedom for you, it is freedom for those around you, who no longer live in fear of your instability. Yet, discipline must be carried with compassion, not with harshness. If you fall, if you break your vow, if you slip into old habits, do not punish yourself. Guilt and shame are not discipline, they are chains. True discipline is steady and kind. It says, "He fell, but I will rise again." Like a river that meets a rock, discipline flows around obstacles and continues on its course. Tonight, reflect on what freedom means to you. Is it following every impulse, or is it living with clarity, aligned with what you value most? What small discipline could bring you closer to that freedom? Perhaps it is rising a little earlier for silence. Perhaps it is choosing words more carefully. Perhaps it is pausing for one breath before acting. These are not restrictions. They are keys to liberation. Remember, freedom is not the absence of discipline. Freedom is the fruit of discipline. When the mind is trained, when habits are aligned with wisdom, when the heart is steady, you are no longer a prisoner of desire or fear. You are free. The outer world is often taken as the measure of our lives, the house we live in, the work we do, the relationships that surround us. Yet Buddhism teaches that all of these are reflections, mirrors of the inner state of mind. The world you see is not separate from you. It bends and shifts according to the thoughts you nurture, the emotions you repeat, the vision you carry within. Change the inner world, and the outer follows like a shadow. When you meditate, you may think you are sitting alone, eyes closed, withdrawn from others. Yet the calm you cultivate ripples outward. A quieter mind means softer words. Softer words create gentler interactions, and gentler interactions weave healthier relationships. The peace you grow within becomes the peace others feel around you. In this way, your inner practice is never only for yourself, it is also for the world you inhabit. Consider how anger works. When you dwell on anger, even silently, it colors your face, your tone, your gestures. Others feel its edge before you speak a word. The outer world grows tense because the inner world is inflamed. But when you dwell on compassion, even silently, Your presence relaxes others. They feel safe, welcomed, uplifted. The outer world brightens because the inner world is illuminated. The Buddha once said, "Hatred never ceases by hatred, but only by love." This is an eternal law. When you transform hatred inside yourself, you interrupt cycles of violence outside yourself. When you choose patience, you prevent quarrels. When you choose forgiveness, you heal relationships. Your private choices become public consequences. What you tend in the soil of your mind becomes the harvest of your life and the lives you touch. Zen teachers use the image of a mirror. A cloudy mirror distorts everything it reflects. A polished mirror shows things clearly. The mind is the mirror of life. If it is clouded by fear, you see a fearful world. If it is polished by mindfulness, you see the same world, yet with clarity, beauty, and possibility. The world has not changed. You have. And through your changed vision, the world itself begins to respond differently. Relationships especially reveal this truth. If you carry insecurity within, you misinterpret others' words as criticism. If you carry suspicion, you see betrayal everywhere. If you carry compassion, you interpret the same words as care, the same actions as opportunities for understanding. The people around you may not have changed, but your perception changes the relationship. The inner becomes the outer. There is a story of a disciple who complained to his teacher, "The monastery is full of selfish people. They annoy me constantly." The teacher replied, "The monastery is a mirror. When you polish your own mind, you will find the people polished too." Weeks later, the disciple returned and said, "Master, everyone has changed. They are kinder, gentler." The teacher smiled. "No, it is you who changed. And so your world has changed." Meditation is the deepest way to transform this mirror. Sitting quietly, you learn to watch thoughts without being ruled by them. Slowly, fear loses its grip, anger loses its heat, and doubt loses its weight. As the mind clears, you see more truly. And when you rise from the cushion, the world greets you differently, not because the world itself has altered, but because you bring to it a clearer heart. Even small inner practices reshape the outer world. If you practice gratitude each morning, soon you notice kindness more readily in others. If you practice patience in traffic, you notice opportunities for compassion instead of frustration. If you practice mindfulness in eating, food tastes richer, meals feel sacred, and the body responds with greater balance. The outer world bends to the quality of your inner gaze. Yet the teaching is not only that, the inner shapes the outer. The outer also nourishes the inner. To sit in nature, to walk among trees, to hear the sound of water. These outer conditions ease the mind. To surround yourself with kind people, with words of wisdom, with uplifting art. These outer forms feed the seeds of peace. The relationship is mutual. By caring for the outer wisely, you nurture the inner. By caring for the inner wisely, you transform the outer. Think of it as a dance. The mind creates the world you experience. and the world reflects back, reinforcing the mind. Break the cycle of negativity by cultivating peace inside, and the world begins to echo peace back to you. Break the cycle of anger by choosing compassion inside, and the world begins to soften. This is the living law of interdependence. Tonight, reflect gently on the mirror of your own life. What have your relationships been reflecting lately? What does the world around you say about the state of your inner mind? If you wish to see kindness outside, will you plant kindness inside? If you wish to see peace outside, will you nurture peace inside? Remember, the boundary between inner and outer is thin as air. The world is not separate from you. It is the extension of your mind, the unfolding of your thoughts, the echo of your heart. Transform the inner, and the outer will follow. History offers countless reminders that thought precedes destiny. Every great change in the world began first as a seed in the mind of an individual. The Buddha himself was once a prince, surrounded by comfort and luxury. Yet his thoughts turned toward the suffering he saw outside the palace walls, the sick, the aging, the dying. Those reflections shaped his destiny. By dwelling on the truth of impermanence, he walked away from a life of indulgence and began the search for liberation. His thoughts gave birth to the Dharma, a path that has guided millions across centuries. Zen masters embody the same law in quieter ways. Take the story of Bodhidharma, who traveled from India to China, carrying nothing but the conviction that meditation could awaken the human heart. He sat in silence for years, unmoved even when mocked, because his mind was filled with the vision of awakening. That vision became the foundation of Zen itself. What began as thought became an enduring tradition that transformed countless lives. But it is not only great figures who demonstrate this truth. Ordinary people, too, transform their destinies by transforming their thoughts. A farmer who chooses gratitude instead of resentment endures hardship with resilience and brings peace to his family. A mother who chooses compassion instead of anger teaches her children kindness, altering the future of generations. A worker who chooses patience instead of bitterness creates harmony in his community. Their names may not be written in books, yet their quiet victories ripple outward, shaping the world in unseen ways. The law is the same for all thoughts shape emotions. Emotions shape actions. Actions shape destiny. The one who thinks constantly of failure acts hesitantly and creates defeat. The one who holds strength in the mind acts boldly and creates progress. The one who fills the heart with compassion acts generously and creates harmony. Every story of greatness, whether loud or quiet, begins in the soil of thought. Consider the story of Angulimala, the feared bandit who once wore a garland of fingers around his neck. His mind was filled with hatred and violence, and his destiny seemed sealed in blood. Yet when he encountered the Buddha, a single shift in thought occurred. He saw, for the first time, the possibility of compassion. That seed took root. Angulimala laid down his weapons, became a monk, and lived the rest of his life in service and peace. His destiny was rewritten because his mind was rewritten. History also shows us the opposite. Leaders who filled their minds with greed or hatred created worlds of destruction. Wars, oppressions, cruelties, they all began as thoughts. No act of harm arises in a vacuum. First, it is conceived in the mind, repeated, believed, and then acted upon. The battlefield of history is the battlefield of thought. This is why the Buddha warned that guarding the mind is the greatest responsibility. What you dwell upon, you become. What you repeat, you live. What you nurture, you give to the world. The stakes are not only personal but collective. When individuals cultivate wisdom, compassion, and peace, the world reflects it. When individuals cultivate greed, hatred, and delusion, the world reflects that too. Even modern stories confirm this. People who transformed suffering into service, who turned personal pain into healing for others, all followed the same principle. They could have drowned in despair, yet they chose another thought. They planted meaning instead of bitterness, and that choice shaped their destiny. Zen masters often remind students with a simple phrase, "Your mind is your world." Look into history. Look into your own life, and you will see this is no metaphor but reality. Tonight, reflect on the examples that inspire you. Was it the Buddha's steadfast search for truth? Was it a teacher who guided you with kindness? Was it a stranger who acted with unexpected generosity? Notice how their inner thoughts shaped their actions, and how their actions shaped your life. Then ask yourself, what thoughts am I planting today that will shape the lives of others tomorrow? Remember, history is not only written in books, it is written in every mind. Every day, you are shaping it now. With each thought, you choose to nurture. The journey now circles back to the beginning. Every thought is a seed, and every seed bears fruit. This is not poetry, but law. A truth repeated in every Buddhist teaching. Karma is not fate imposed from outside. It is the unfolding of the seeds you plant in the soil of your own mind. If you scatter weeds, anger, greed, delusion, do not be surprised when your life feels tangled, heavy, and harsh. If you plant compassion, patience, and wisdom, your life becomes a field of peace. A harvest that nourishes not only you, but all who walk beside you. This is the final call to awareness. Guard the garden of your mind, for the mind is fertile ground, endlessly creative, endlessly receptive. It does not care what is planted. It will nurture weeds as faithfully as it nurtures roses. The gardener must decide. The Buddha said, "All that we are is the result of what we have thought. It is founded on our thoughts. It is made up of our thoughts." The garden of life is not accidental, it is cultivated. To guard your garden is not to fear every stray seed. Thoughts will come and go, carried on the wind of memory, of news, of passing voices. Some will be wholesome, some not. You cannot stop them from landing, but you can choose which to water. Awareness is the hand of the gardener. With it, you notice the weeds early, before they spread. Without it, you wake one day to find the garden overrun. Guarding also means feeding the wholesome, deliberately. A seed of gratitude grows when you pause to give thanks for a meal. A seed of compassion grows when you consider the struggles of another. A seed of patience grows when you breathe before reacting in anger. These are not grand acts, but small waterings. A drop here, a drop there. Over time, the garden fills with blossoms. Zen practice often teaches students to see thoughts as visitors. Some knock at the door with gentle hands. Joy, love, clarity. Others pound with fists fear, resentment, jealousy. As the householder of the mind, you decide who stays. If anger enters, it does not need to be given a bed, a meal, a place at the table. You may greet it, bow to it, and ask it to leave. If compassion arrives, welcome it warmly, feed it well, and let it rest. Guarding the mind is nothing more than choosing which guests to host. The karmic law of thoughts is not distant or mysterious. You see it each day. When you wake in gratitude, the hours feel lighter. When you wake in worry, the same hours feel heavy. When you hold patience, the same challenge feels smaller. When you hold anger, the smallest inconvenience feels unbearable. The seed chosen shapes the fruit experienced. This is why mindfulness is not optional but essential. Without it, the weeds of thought grow unchecked. With it, you plant deliberately. Without it, you live on autopilot, repeating old patterns. With it, you break the cycle, sowing new patterns of clarity and compassion. Awareness is the gardener's eye, always scanning the field, always choosing what to nourish. There is a story of a monk who tended a small garden at the monastery. Visitors marveled at its beauty, its balance of stones and blossoms, its sense of peace. One asked, "How did you make it so beautiful?" The monk replied, "I pull one weed each day." Transformation, then, is not sudden but steady. Guarding the mind requires no dramatic gesture, just the daily act of choosing which seed to water, which weed to remove. As you reflect tonight, ask yourself, what have I been planting? What thoughts have I watered most? Have I been nurturing weeds or blossoms? Which seeds will I choose tomorrow? This reflection is not to stir guilt, but to awaken clarity. The garden is never beyond repair. No matter how many weeds have grown, one act of awareness, one moment of care, begins the transformation. The Buddha taught that even a single wholesome thought has power. Like a small lamp, it can illuminate a dark room. Like a tiny seed, it can grow into a great tree. Do not underestimate the moments when you choose kindness instead of cruelty, patience instead of anger, faith instead of doubt. These are not small, they are the architecture of your destiny. Guard your mind gently but vigilantly. Water what is good, uproot what is harmful, and trust that the soil will yield according to the care you give it. For in the end, the mind is not your enemy, nor your master. It is your garden, and the garden reflects the gardener. This is the final call. Be the wise gardener of your life. The battlefield has always been within, not in distant lands, not in the quarrels of others, but here, in the silence of your own mind. The wars of anger and peace, of fear and courage, of hatred and compassion are all fought inside the walls of thought. And the greatest victory is not won through force, but through stillness. The Buddha knew this when he sat beneath the Bodhi tree. Mara came with armies of fear, with storms of temptation, with doubts sharp as arrows. Yet the Buddha did not fight. He did not resist with violence. He simply sat unmoved, grounded in awareness, steady as the earth itself. His stillness was his victory. This is the final lesson. You do not conquer the mind by attacking it. You do not silence thoughts by force. You become victorious when you see them clearly, when you refuse to be ruled by them, when you rest in the spaciousness beyond them. Stillness is not the absence of thought, but the recognition that you are not bound by thought. Like clouds passing through the sky, thoughts move, yet the sky remains vast, untroubled. To abide as the sky is the triumph of stillness. In your own life, storms will come, fear will arrive, whispering that you are not enough. Anger will flare, urging you to strike. Doubt will creep, suggesting you are lost. But if you can sit as the Buddha did, rooted in awareness, unmoved by the noise, you too taste victory. Each time you choose stillness over reaction, you win. Each time you choose patience over impulse, you win. Each time you choose compassion over cruelty, you win. The battlefield within is not won once, but every moment you awaken. Zen masters say, when the mind is still, the universe surrenders. This does not mean the world bends to your will. It means the world ceases to trouble you, because you are no longer caught in its storms. Stillness gives you the freedom to meet life as it is, with clarity and grace. No circumstance can enslave the one who rests in awareness. Let this be your final blessing tonight. May your mind be like a calm lake, reflecting the moon without distortion. May your heart be like the great earth, steady beneath all storms. May your breath be like the wind, flowing freely, never clinging, never resisting. And may your life be the gentle unfolding of seeds planted with compassion, watered with patience, and guarded with wisdom. As you drift into sleep, imagine yourself sitting beneath the Bodhi tree, roots deep, breath steady, spirit unmoved. Around you, thoughts may come like shadows, but within you, a great stillness shines. Rest there, breathe there, trust that this stillness is your true nature, your deepest refuge, your final victory. The battlefield within has been fought. The victory is stillness, and in that stillness, you are free.